continued margin squeeze. And the question for me, especially as we get closer to 2027, is just how much of those price hikes the consumer is going to still be willing to accept.
Well, we have seen the consumer to be incredibly resilient, whether it is higher energy prices earlier this year with electricity costs, higher energy prices at the gasoline pump. We just heard Mike McKee talk about affordability, but the fact of the matter is consumers continue to be resilient. Are you seeing parts, though, of the consumer cohort that is actually struggling right now?
Never count the U.S. consumer out. However, in this macro environment, yes, we hear about that K-shaped economy just so frequently. And that really is the case here. The bottom end not doing quite so well. They are feeling the pinch. They naturally do get hit harder by some of these trends we're talking about, like higher inflation, especially with those non-discretionary purchases. But middle to upper income earners, they're actually doing quite well right now. They're, first of all, sitting on real wealth effects, things like my home being worth more than it was, my stock portfolio doing very well, as you quoted in the numbers earlier. And it turns out that it's those middle to upper income earners that really drive the bulk of retail spending. The consumer, at the end of the day, drives 2/3 of gross domestic product. So as that especially upper income earner goes, so will go our economy.
I'm just wondering, Lauren, I know that right now we're hearing commentary coming from the Sintra conference, and they're talking about inflation, they're talking about the risks, they're talking about oil prices, but they're also talking a lot about AI, not necessarily as a CapEx boom, but in terms of concentration risk with respect to markets and how this could become a financial risk that really does torpedo economic growth. How much are you watching some of the market moves tied to AI and the connection between the economic trajectory in the United States?
So if AI and data centers are a bubble, I don't think that bubble is bursting immediately. Really what I'm looking for as a macro driver is, can AI make us better? Can we actually see better productivity? Thus far, there are some tentative signs that we are seeing an upward tilt there. But I think the jury is still out. It's just too soon. The effects are not grand enough. And if you go back and compare this to the gains that we made in, say, the 90s with the advent of the personal computer, the internet, that's where we really see what a shift in technology can do. So I'm thinking of AI as just the next iteration. Yes, some companies will be able to harness it. That will help them. Again, I mentioned this margin squeeze. That's going to be a very real differentiator for firms out there. And if these companies are willing to invest in AI, and not just invest in a throw money at the problem kind of way, but really use AI to solve a problem, that's where I think we're going to see the winners.
Lauren Seidel-Baker of ITR Economics, thank you so much for being with us. Right now, let's get you an update on stories elsewhere this morning. Here is your Bloomberg Brief with Bonnie Quinn. Bonnie.
Lisa, thank you. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is trying to return to her country to help with reconstruction efforts after 2 earthquakes last week. She says she was unable to return because the government closed its airspace in an effort to block her arrival. Despite being one of 23 underwriters, South Korea's Mirai Asset Securities received no stock allocation in SpaceX's IPO. Sources telling us here at Bloomberg, the issue was a misunderstanding over how orders were supposed to be submitted. The company is now apologizing to clients and being inspected by local regulators. Harangue delivering the biggest upset so far in the World Cup, sending 4-time champions Germany home in a dramatic penalty shootout after they finished at 1 goal each following extra time. It was Germany's first appearance in the knockout round since they last won the tournament in 2014. And that is your Bloomberg Brief. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. I have to say, it's incredibly dramatic when it comes to shootout, but it feels deeply unsatisfying because ultimately, after all that work, all the domination of Germany in the first half, and nothing, right? And there's sort of this feeling of just interpersonal rivalries, and internal angst that you could feel with all of them.
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, I grew up playing soccer. I played for most of my life. You run around for 90 minutes. It comes to a shootout and you lose. It is so upsetting. I think today is actually now a national holiday in Paraguay because of this huge win.
Congratulations to Paraguay. Up next, setting you up for the day ahead. Plus, David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group, as Fed Chair Kevin Warsh takes his new policy regime on tour over to Sintra, Portugal, which really looks beautiful. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Good morning.
Welcome to Atlanta, and I'm asking you to contribute $20 to this Senate campaign because I'm the only Democratic senator.
Happening today in the Middle East, U.S. and Iranian officials will return to the negotiating table in Qatar after a tense weekend threatened to put their peace deal at risk. Iran's president now saying his country will honor the agreement if the U.S. does the same. Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Inch joins us live in Tel Aviv with the details. Trey.
Yeah, hey Todd, good morning. High-level talks will take place today in Doha, Qatar, aimed at advancing the memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran. U.S. Special Envoys Kushner and Witkoff will be in attendance and are expected to meet directly with the Qatari Prime Minister, according to a diplomat familiar with the talks. Technical talks about the MOU are then scheduled to take place on Wednesday.
Meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. We're winning militarily. It's almost won militarily, I would say. And it's really very simple. It's the denuclearization of Iran. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that, no fairness.
Iranian officials have indicated that no direct talks will take place between the United States and Iran while in Doha, but did confirm that a delegation will be traveling to Qatar. The 60-day window is meant to iron out the details of Iran's nuclear program and keep the Strait of Hormuz open. President Trump has indicated he reserves both military and diplomatic options after that time period. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian posted to X, saying mutual understanding is a two-way street. If the American side adheres to the agreement, we will also fulfill our commitments. Our approach to unreasonable saber-rattling and baseless threats is to rely on rationality and human dignity in decision-making and to defend decisively and fearlessly when it comes time to act. Now, Iran's president did not mention Iranian attacks on the Strait of Hormuz that took place late last week and over the weekend. We're also tracking developments here in Israel, where Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz spoke to reporters yesterday. He indicated the IDF has been instructed to prepare an independent Israeli operation against Iran and remains on alert. Katz said that Israel would strike Iran with force if more missiles are launched by Iran. The bottom line here, the ceasefire is holding, but there are clearly preparations underway in case these diplomatic conversations fail. Carly?
Yeah, Trey, yesterday the president posted on Truth Social, Iran has requested a meeting. It will take place tomorrow in Doha, but as you said, Iran is denying that direct talks will take place. What do you make of that difference in messaging or what the reality of the situation could actually be later today? It's noon in Doha right now.
Oftentimes the Iranians will say one thing for their domestic audience, but at the negotiating table say something completely different. And we've seen that throughout these talks that took place, not just in Qatar, but also in Islamabad and ultimately in Switzerland. And so oftentimes the Iranians are playing to their base, and behind the scenes they are making concessions. And that's why we have to be patient here and wait for the facts that come out of these conversations in Doha, because even if there aren't direct talks taking place, these conversations are often mediated by the Qataris or the Pakistanis, and it gives credence to the ability of this to move forward. And that is ultimately what the United States is trying to do. They are using this window to iron out the details of Iran's nuclear program, to ensure that the Iranians never have a nuclear weapon, and ultimately the Strait of Hormuz remains open. Carly?
All right, Trey, thanks live from Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Let's bring in Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Forum and Council on Foreign Relations member, Dr. Kanta Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed, thank you for joining us. So what do you think about the latest? And Trey saying that there could be a potential for direct talks to take place. You never know, but there is certainly a potential for moving the ball forward here.
Look, I think dialogue is always good. It's not surprising that there may not be face-to-face interactions between the US and the Iranian delegation at this point. That's the role of Qatar. But much more interesting is the quiet and very serious diplomacy that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been leading in Lebanon. Also, we've had the commander of CENTCOM in Lebanon recently, and there's a very strong consensus with the GCC nations, all of the Gulf cooperation states, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, the UAE, all of them consolidating in a position that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, Iran cannot be left with proxies such as Hezbollah or with missiles, and the straits go free without penalty. And I think that's where the pressure is building on Iran, which is essentially occupying Lebanon with its Iran cannot be left with proxies. Of Hezbollah, that's where the pressure is building.
Yeah, Lebanon, or Hezbollah and Iran synonymous with one another, and there is certainly a lot going on when it comes to Israel. Yesterday, the president said when it comes to these efforts in Qatar, that Qatar this week could be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. What do you make of the president's phrasing there?
I think the president is a masterful communicator, and there's value in strategic ambiguity. We, the public, don't need to know every detail. And most of all, Iran is on the back foot. It is badly injured. It is.
There are inflationary pressures coming out of the war in Iran, for sure. Oil prices have been up for a while. And while they probably are going to recede, I do think there's some residual inflation. But I suspect that the Federal Reserve Board can wait another quarter or so before deciding it needs to raise rates. And I'm not saying it will have to, but Kevin Warsh is a very smart person. He's got the president's confidence.
Those are a little bit more fundamental to our economy, but if we stay in this kind of government.
I want to rewind the video here because it's dealing with David Rubenstein, who I met recently. They're interviewing him on Bloomberg.
The healthcare sector as the only job creators out there.
Ask the question, if there's a moderate high.
Yes. To outpace inflation. I think we're at.
Despite being one of 23 underwriters, South Korea's Mirai Asset Securities received no stock allocation in SpaceX's IPO. Sources telling us here at Bloomberg, the issue was a misunderstanding over how orders were supposed to be submitted. The company is now apologizing to clients and being inspected by local regulators. Harangue delivering the biggest upset so far in the World Cup, sending four-time champions.
Inflation press.
Asset management, the debate seems to be not necessarily what the Fed will do this year. A lot of people think maybe a hike, but more likely on hold. It's next year. Is it going to be a hike or is it going to be a cut? Right now in markets, you can see a fading of the optimism earlier this morning, although S&P futures just about unchanged. Two-year yields 4.12% up, nearly 2 basis points. Brent crude has been fluctuating around all morning. Just essentially flat at $73 on Brent. And you can see that Japanese yen continuing to weaken. The weakest levels going back to 1986. A question over to you, Bank of Japan. What you gonna do? Counting down to the opening bell. Here's a trading diary for the week ahead. At 10 a.m. Eastern, JOLTS data and consumer confidence after the close. Nike earnings. How goes the turnaround that hasn't really led to any kind of pop of the shares this year? Wednesday, ISM and ADP data, plus Fed Chair Kevin Warsh. What does he stand for? What will he say? He'll be speaking in Sintra, Portugal, Thursday. The June payrolls report, and on Friday, a day off for the 4th of July, the U.S. Independence Day. Looking ahead to the Fed Chair's international debut, Kevin Warsh taking the stage tomorrow in Sintra, Portugal, alongside global central bankers. David Rubenstein of Carlyle joins us now. David, thank you so much for being with us. Always great to get your thoughts. How much are you looking at this moment as an inflationary one that requires higher rates as a result of some of the dynamism that we're seeing in other pockets of the economy?
Clearly, the ECB has raised rates recently, and other central banks around the world are raising rates. But Kevin Warsh clearly has a mandate not to increase rates all that much. And I think President Trump is not looking to him as somebody who's going to raise rates very much. The most recent meeting, the Fed did not raise rates, and I suspect that Kevin Warsh will wait as long as he can before raising rates. President Trump has a lot of confidence in Kevin Warsh, more than he did, for whatever reason, in Jay Powell. So I think Kevin Warsh can raise rates if he needs to, but I think he'll get less criticism from President Trump but I think he would prefer to hold off doing that for quite some time if possible.
David, do you think that he needs to? Do you think that right now the inflationary pressures that you're seeing coming from AI, whether it's in portfolio companies, whether it's in just business more broadly, are something that is going to be sticky and requiring of a policy move?
There are inflationary pressures coming out of the war in Iran, for sure. Oil prices have been up for a while, and while they probably are going to recede, I do think there's some residual inflation, but I suspect that the Federal Reserve Board can wait another quarter or so before deciding it needs to raise rates. And I'm not saying it will have to, but Kevin Warsh is a very smart person. He's got the president's confidence. Unfortunately, Jay Powell did not have the president's confidence, so I thought he did a good job. But Kevin Warsh, I think, was going to have much more leeway to do what he wants to do than Jay Powell did.
David, when you say clearly has a mandate not to raise rates, you mean he clearly has a mandate from the President of the United States? Are you then insinuating that you don't think he's truly independent?
Well, I think he is independent, and I think he's very strong-willed, and he's a very smart person. He's got a lot of experience. He's been on the Fed before. But I think it's the kind of situation where President Trump relies on him more than he probably does on Jay Powell. He's known him for a longer period of time. He's known his family for a long period of time. And I just think he's going to give him more leeway. That doesn't mean that Kevin Warsh is not going to raise rates. I suspect he'll do what the numbers indicate he should be doing. And I do think he will effectively control the Federal Reserve process. And what he wants to do, I think the Federal Reserve will go along with.
What do you make of his performance thus far? No dot on the dot plot. He's not going to give forward guidance. He has these 5 task force that, maybe by the end of the year we'll have an understanding of what they decide to report out. Do you think this is the right approach?
Well, remember, Alan Greenspan was chairman of the Fed for 18 years, unfortunately just passed away, and he did not give the kind of guidance that Jay Powell did. Ben Bernanke gave some guidance, but not as much as Jay Powell did. So it's not as if the Federal Reserve has always given the kind of guidance that Jay Powell did. I do think Kevin Warsh thinks that the Fed should be a little bit less transparent, not be so open about what it's thinking, and I suspect you'll see less transparency and fewer press conferences than maybe Jay Powell had. I think Jay Powell did a very good job in explaining what the Fed was doing, but some people, obviously Kevin Warsh, one of them, think that the Fed should be a little bit less transparent.
David, we're talking about the central banking universe as this meeting takes place in Sintra, and they're talking as much about traditional economics as they are about AI stock valuations and concerns about what this does when it comes to systemic risk. As a business owner, as someone in markets, are you getting concerned about valuations getting ahead of how quickly we can deploy some of this technology in productive ways?
Enormous amounts of money is now going into AI and going into data centers. And the theory behind investing is you get your money back with a return. Whether you'll get your money back with a reasonable return on all the AI investments is unclear at this point, because so much money is going into this area, and it's not clear when the returns will come back, if at all. So I do think there's reason for caution, but I don't think it's a concern right now that AI will be a bubble that will burst dramatically. I do think there's a lot of interest in AI, and I think for some time you're going to see a lot of investment dollars going into it. And I think a lot of them are justified because AI is clearly going to change the way we live and the way we deal with business, just the way the internet did. Whether the internet had a bubble or not at some point in time is something that you could say maybe it did. AI could have a little bubble at some point, but right now I think the markets are still fairly resolved that AI will be a pretty good thing to invest in. And there may be at some point in time, there might be some slight reduction in the values, but generally AI is here to stay, and enormous amounts of money are going to go into this area.
Yeah, something I'm sure that you talked about online and offline with Rick Wurster in your latest episode of Bloomberg Wealth, which we'll get into in a second. How much do you see AI and some of these large language models transforming the asset management industry, not just on the retail side, on the private asset side, in your business, what you're doing?
Well, AI is here, they're going to change everything. For example, in the investment world, AI models are being used to assess whether a deal is a good deal or a stock is a good deal. The models will get perfected over a period of time, but I do know that some private equity firms are beginning to look at AI as a help in making decisions about whether to pursue certain investments.
Most of these AI applications that he's talking about in terms of go, no go on a deal or determining the viability of a deal,
These are regression analyses. What you can do is take data of multiple variables, create a model through regression, and you plug in the values for those different variables, and voila, you'll have a function that will tell you go or no go for a particular deal. So we're talking about data and analysis here. We're not really talking about the need for AI. You really need AI to do this? Because all you need is a bunch of variables in Excel for a column, and you have, a certain a time series or some other series, and you're going to be able to do a regression. So why do we need AI? Now, there are applications where AI is important, but a lot of this stuff, it's just companies weren't using the tools that were available that have been around for 150 years or more. It's called statistics. It's really simple. But what it is you have a bunch of people in the C-suite that really don't know statistics. You have a bunch of people that are underlings that are doing the daily work that really don't understand statistics or how to use it. So 90% of the stuff that AI is providing is because you have a workforce that really can't interrogate data, create data and interrogate it. Find out what the correlations are, find out if there's causality. It's not that hard. There's a bunch of statistical functions in Excel. You can do most of this stuff in Excel. And your business isn't changing that often, where you have to have some sort of real-time feed and all this stuff. What he was talking about in terms of deals that should be invested in or not. So you come up with 30 variables that are involved in a deal. You have your history of what the variables were and what the end result was in a particular deal. And you can just do a regression on it. They'll tell you. It's not that hard. And even if you don't want to do a regression on it, all you got to do is just look at the table and just think about it. Just stare at the table and look at the pattern. There'll be patterns that you'll notice if you actually spend the time to look at a table. And you'll realize, well, if a company, if we invest too much in this company relative to revenues, maybe they fail. So you interrogate the data. What's this need the AI? You don't. You don't need the AI. That's the point I'm making. All you need to do is do a regression analysis. Stupid.
I know my own firm, in certain areas, we have used AI quite extensively to help us speed up the decisions that are about to be made. For example, if you're looking at a large portfolio of investments, you can make the decision about whether they're good or not much more rapidly with using AI technology.
Bullshit.
This is something
That's
that I
total
think
bullshit.
Emery wants
That's
to
total
know.
bullshit. What it is that they could have used a regression analysis. What he just said is total bullshit. And anyone that knows anything about statistics would agree with me on this. Now, there are things that you can use AI for, like taking text of a document, important features, and ask it to convert it into a consumable type PowerPoint product that looks nice, that has a certain type of theme or whatever. And it'll do it pretty well. I'm trying this. You can have a set of data or a summary or a PDF fed in, and it can take that, summarize it, and convert it into PowerPoint. Then you can tweak it in terms of the theme. Depends on how you create the slides. You can do this in ChatGPT, but you can also do it with Copilot. And it does a great job, and it speeds the process up. But in terms of deciding for a deal or no deal, you don't need AI. You don't need AI. You need regression, but you don't need AI. stupid.
Sports teams, you're going to be using AI to purchase next, or they're going to be advising the Knicks. Is that right?
Well, David, I know that you recently were at an NBA meeting and gifted the Declaration of Independence a replica. I'm not going to nudge you about the Orioles, but if you were Mr. Dolan, what would you do right now with the New York Knicks?
I think I have enough problems dealing with my own baseball team and challenges, so I'm not going to give any advice to anybody else. I think each person should deal with their own situation, and I'm hardly one to give advice at this point. But I'm optimistic that baseball is going to be more and more popular increasingly. I do think that that Major League Baseball will thrive the remainder of this season, and I'm quite optimistic about the attendance at Major League Baseball games and the fan viewership. So each owner has to deal with their problems themselves, their challenges themselves, and I'm not one here to give advice to others.
David Rubenstein, you're a legend, and it's always wonderful to speak with you. David Rubenstein of the Carlyle Group. Do not miss David's conversation.
Yeah, I was able to see him in an event, and we were talking about the event was dealing with the Declaration of Independence, how important it is to the country, the importance of history, and how the youth needs to learn U.S. history. Why are we picking July 4th as the actual birth of our nation? Great conversation. But in terms of AI, to decide if you're going to do multi-billion-dollar deals, you don't need it. You need a regression analysis. You need to know what your variables are. But just go to first principles. How does the AI work? It uses a neural network. How does the neural network work? It takes a series of variables and figures out the weight to determine a particular outcome. So it knows the outcome, it knows what the variables are, and it's calculating weights, what the coefficients of these variables are. That's exactly what a regression analysis is in a little bit more parsimonious way, which is much quicker and much cheaper. And guess what? It's pretty accurate. You can do a neural network of 30 variables and a regression analysis on 30 variables. If you do the regression analysis properly, the accuracy between the regression analysis and the neural network is going to be almost the same. What becomes important in using AI is when you're using billions of variables or thousands of variables, where it's too hard to do a regression analysis. But most companies don't have a billion data points to track and variables. So most businesses, including private equity, VCs, they don't need that. See, the main point that I'm making here is that everyone thinks answer is AI, answer is AI. No, answer is data and data interrogating, understanding what the data is saying. Now, some data is so large that you need help. That help can be sped up by using AI. And in some cases, you're wasting your time with AI or your money. And you can do the data interrogation and the analysis with simple statistical tools that most people coming out of business school are trained in. Unfortunately, most people out there don't use them. The regression and the statistical analysis in Excel has been available for people to use for at least 2 decades. 2 decades. 20 years. 20 years. And everyone now is jumping on the bandwagon of AI to determine if you should do a deal or not. People were doing investments in finance by understanding a particular stock relative to a benchmark like the S&P 500, if they should underweight it or overweight it. Or just natural return of the S&P 500 and deciding to buy or sell the S&P 500 with the current time period. That can be all done in regression. See the point that I'm making? You have to understand what the AI is. The AI is nothing but a very large neural network. And in that neural network, it's calculating coefficients for variables. When you're training it, it knows the output from the data that you're training and the different variables. And it's creating a network, it's creating a series of regressions to understand what those weights should be, what those variable weights should be. Now, some variables will drop out, some variables will be really important, but it knows the output and it knows what the variables are. And it's training and getting to become more accurate to get to the output. And it's adjusting those variables and those coefficients. That's exactly what a regression is. People need to wake up. Don't waste your money. If you have a small business, don't waste your money on AI. You're totally wasting your money on AI. Because most small businesses, and when I talk about small business, I'm talking even a $100 million business. Most small businesses don't have 30 or more variables that really drive their bottom line. If you really want to be honest about your business can be boiled down to about 10 variables. And about 5 for the expenses and about 5 for the revenues. Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. Thank you for joining. We are live streaming on Rumble and YouTube. And where else are you going to get great information like don't overly invest in AI? It's a con, all right? Because what they're trying to do is charge you for every token when you're accessing it. It's a waste. Just if you can do the data analytics within simple softwares like Excel or even a higher end software like SPSS or some other statistical software, you can do just as well. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Now, if you need to automate some stuff like PowerPoint and all that, then you're talking about Copilot, right? But don't overly jump into the bandwagon. You're going to be losing money. We're going to be talking about the markets. The markets haven't opened up yet. They'll open up in a little bit more than 15 minutes. I'm going to go into detail on how to take a look at the oil markets. And we're going to take a look at any breaking news, what's going on, right? Thank you for joining. You can watch this stream on Rumble, YouTube, or on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. I have 2 versions of this live stream, what I call the larger screen, and then the data. You can actually see the data feed of the market on YouTube or on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Everything's live streamed. And everything is in real time. So these price curves that you're seeing are in real time. Now, I'm going to tell you how I am making money off of the news. I've been doing this for a very long time, more than 20 years. So you just need to pay attention. If you pay attention, you will make money. And because of my research and my knowledge in medicine, if you pay attention to me, you will slow down the aging process and get healthy. If you do both of these things, you will get wealthy and healthy. Nobody can do this. Nobody. There are some people that will talk about the market. There'll be some people that will be talking about how to improve your health. But how many of them really have an intimate knowledge of both? How many of them really have an intimate knowledge of like how complex systems really work in a series of domains, like engineering, like economics, like medicine? Very few people. Very few people. Maybe 50,000 people in the world. Now, if we want to use the numbers of 8 billion, 50,000 people That's a pretty small percentage of the world population. So it behooves you to actually listen to me. All right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. C60 is a antioxidant that is almost 1,000 times more potent than vitamin C. Why? Because C60 is a molecule that looks like a soccer ball. It's a buckyball. It's a fullerene. 60 carbons connected together. And when you have carbon next to carbon, what it does is it shares electrons. It has 4 electron valence spaces, all right, to be able to share, right? So what will happen is that it shimmers. This buckyball will shimmer with electron activity. This is important because what it does is this will discharge or absorb or neutralize free radicals. Now, free radicals do damage to your body. What you want is to take a teaspoon of this every day, C60. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. But take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach in the morning for best absorption. It has to be in an oil because it's lipid soluble and it allows you to absorb. Now, what will happen is it'll get into your cells and C60 will soak up those free radicals, bring down inflammation in the cell, and improve your mitochondria. Your mitochondria is a powerhouse for energy. People age because one major reason people age is because the mitochondria declines in population within the cell and in health of the mitochondria. By taking C60, you're improving the health of your mitochondria. You're increasing your energy because your mitochondria is producing the ATP that your cells need for energy. Now, when your cells have more energy, you've attacked one of the major pillars of aging, energy. When people look like they're older, what do they say? Oh, they're out of energy. They look like they're out of energy. They can't even move. All right? If you pay attention throughout this whole broadcast, I'm going to tell you how to slow down aging. So C60 will soak up those free radicals and boost up your energy. For the vascular level, it's going to soak up free radicals and reduce the concentration of what is called oxidized LDL. Oxidized LDL builds up as plaque. When you have less of it, you have less plaque formation. That means your cardiovascular system will improve over time. That means you'll have better blood flow, including to your brain. And when you have better blood flow to your brain, your hippocampus will have the nutrients it needs so it doesn't die. Now, my father died from ischemic dementia. It sucks. Anyone that has ever seen a patient, a loved one, whatever, a friend that had to suffer from dementia, it sucks. All right, so you better pay attention to me here. Better blood flow to the brain improves the hippocampus. Now, C60 will also get into your neuron, and that neuron will have stress, right? So C60 will bring down the stress and soak up the free radicals and help the mitochondria of the neuron. That way the neuron has the ATP to create the neurotransmitters, so you'll have the better neuroplasticity, positive neuroplasticity, so your dendritic connections are connected. You'll be able to think better. You'll have better memory. You'll have better sleep. You'll be able to concentrate better. So C60 helps not just cardiovascular, but also brain function. It also helps with your immune system and your endocrine system by bringing down inflammation and soaking up those free radicals. And at the basal layer, C60 will improve your basal layer of your skin. So over time, when you're creating new skin cells, those skin cells that are being produced are healthier and healthier over time. You will look younger. Now that's a little bit more of a vanity issue, but internally, your cells will perform better and be younger. So when you're soaking up those free radicals and reducing stress, you're reducing methylation of your genes. And when you're reducing the methylation of your genes, you're slowing down the aging process, because through time, what will happen is that when you age, you're going to start to methylate more of your genes, and your gene expression starts to go down. And you're deviating away from your youthful gene expression. So you take a look at when you look at the epigenetics of you being younger and what your expression profile was, gene expression profile was, compared to when you're older, it's different because of this methylation process. So your genes change. The epigenetics of your genes will change. You'll have some areas will be methylated more, some areas will be acylated more. But the point here is that over time, you're building up methylation of your genes. You want to slow that down. You can slow that down by taking C60. And by doing that, you're slowing down the aging process. Now, I've been doing this for over 10 years every day. It works. But there's magic in what I have to say. There are some people who'll just buy C60 from some vendor, all right? The magic is the stacking. Stack how I stack it. And that way you're targeting all of the components that are dealing with aging. Now, I'm almost the same age as Dr. Sinclair, all right? I'm older than Brian Johnson. I'm healthier than Brian Johnson. And Brian Johnson is a tech bro that spent $2 million a year to try to slow down aging. You listen to me, it's affordable, and it works. And I've been doing this for a very long time. So just pay attention and just do it. And by doing that on a regular basis, you will notice that you are slowly getting healthier and younger. Now, are you going to be able to fast track back to adolescence? No. But the point here is that when you get old, as you're aging, you're going to have more vitality and more longevity. Now, it's a holistic approach, but it works. Now, you can either be dependent on pharmacopoeia when you get older, or even now, if you're middle age. More people are depending on pharmacopoeia as they're getting into their 30s. And oh, by the way, cardiovascular disease in the United States starts at age 15. 15, not 35. So, it's your path, modern man. Which way do you want to go? You want to take pharmacopoeia, or do you want to listen to Dr. Paul Cottrell? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60, it works. But pay attention to the stacking, as I will be talking about it in this broadcast. And if you go to the store and purchase the products, make sure you use discount 5 so you save a little bit of money. But pay attention. This works. Now, Alex Jones out there, he was pushing a bunch of supplements. Now, Alex Jones, chronologically, is younger than I am. All right? He's 2 years younger. Does he look 2 years younger than Dr. Paul Cottrell? Or does it that Dr. Paul Cottrell looks 10 years or 20 years younger than Alex Jones? Holistic approach, proper supplementation and stacking is the answer. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, because the proof is in the pudding.
Insight with Haslinda Alim, only on Bloomberg.
It's the world's second largest economy with a growing influence in global affairs. Bloomberg The China Show brings you the unmatched expertise you need to keep track of breaking news, in-depth market analysis, and the most influential newsmakers in and around China.
We need to do more to engage the market more. Where this far, I think we call a little sweet spot.
Massive cities right now.
It's already a different game.
Bloomberg The China Show. Weekdays around the world, right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything.
Making money isn't about drowning in emotions. It's about understanding what's actually happening. Market.
No, making money is drowning in emotions.
Balance.
Okay. All right. Markets haven't opened up yet, but I'll talk about what's going on in the pre-market session. The S&P 500 is a little bit down in terms of the futures market. It's trading at 7,493. So beware of the open that will be taking place in about 6 minutes or so. VIX is trading at 1768, so that's stable. The euro is trading at 114. It was trading at 113. So the euro is strengthening a little bit relative to the dollar. And the Japanese yen is trading at 162.37. It was trading at 161. So actually the Japanese yen is weakening a little bit. Bitcoin, major sell-off lately. It's trading at 58,495. If you're still in Bitcoin, get out. Now, when I was trading Bitcoin, I got out at 95. So, and I did not go back in. I'm never going back into Bitcoin. But I was lucky. I made some money, and but I was out at 95. But the thing is that if you want to take the big risks and go into Bitcoin, that's your own thing. And I don't believe that there's fundamentals with Bitcoin. And many people are starting to dump because they're thinking that this is not going to retrace back up to 110, 115, 120. Now, if you want to short Bitcoin, that's a different story. You'll probably make some money. Now, oil is trading at 70.94. Now, what is interesting is there's around $68, $69 a barrel support level. And I did an analysis, published it on Saturday, watch it, and I go into detail about the oil market, the natural gas market, the belly of the curve for the treasuries, the VIX, the S&P 500, and what's going to happen here. Now, there's going to be a trading range between about 68 to close to about 75. If we start hearing negative news with the Strait or with the MOU, something's going on with Iran, whatever it is, Israel, some bad news out of the Middle East, it's going to test the 78 resistance level. So there's a support level about 69, 68, and there's a resistance level at 70, 78. And there's going to be a trading range between that. But that trading range is going to be closer to 68 to about 74 or 75. But if there's negative news that's coming out, it'll creep up to 74 to 78 and test. So beware. Now, there are a lot of market analysts out there that think, well, there's going to be such a need to buy oil and and that the oil is going to just skyrocket. I think there's a lot of market manipulation in oil. So throw away this idea of fundamental analysis and just pay attention to the system. And that system will tell you certain things. Just pay attention to the system. Perfect analogy. When you're going fishing and you're a biologist and you know exactly when the fish are going to go down the river because of spawning or whatever. But over time, you're noticing that something's changing. But you don't know why, but something's changing in the environment and the spawning cycle is changing. Not as many fish, but you don't know why. But you're a biologist and you're just so focused that there's going to be 100 fish to be able to fish out of the river, and you'll be fine to feed your family because you're a biologist, because you know about spawning and the migration patterns of salmon or whatever. but you don't realize that there something upstream or downstream is affecting the dynamics of the system. So let's say that they were going to move upstream, and maybe there's a village that's being built around the river, and they decided to dam it up a little bit to help water their crops. So there's less water that is allowing for the fish to move upstream. And so biologists go, well, wait a minute here. You know, there's just not as many fish as there needs to be. Because years ago, it was 100 fish every year. And now there's only 10. Why? Maybe my story, you know, is a little flamboyant, but it hits to a point. Just because you understand fundamentals doesn't mean you understand the actual system dynamic. It's all about chaos. And that's the exact reason why the professionals during the crisis in 2020 failed. They all thought they knew better, but they didn't pay attention to a new variable called hubris. All right, markets are open. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,438. VIX is at 17. Oil's trading at 71.06. Natural gas is trading at 3.258. Now, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to be making money. Now, you know, you do it the way you want to do it. I'm going to long S&P 500, and I'm also going to short natural gas. Why? I have a long-term target year end of the S&P 500 at 7,800. There's a support level of 7,200. Near-term support level. There's also a support level at 7,000 for the S&P 500. And there is a very, very, very strong support level at 6,800. So I can accumulate shares even if the market goes down. So just keep on buying in. Just keep on buying in. Just keep on buying in. But don't be stupid. Make sure you have cash on hand so you can do some micro adjustments. So if it starts to sell down, then you buy. And when it's making money, based on your profit target, close, readjust the position, then go back in. All right? Natural gas, short. Why? Typically in July, natural gas will start, July and August, natural gas will start to go down. Now, there is another variable that's going on here. There's a heat wave that's happening in some areas of the world, and there's also more rain in some areas, especially in the Midwest in the United States. So you have heat issues going on in the United States, but also over precipitation. It is possible that natural gas won't go down to 2.6 because of the El Nino effect. But at 3.3, that's a little too hot for, no pun intended, a little bit too expensive for natural gas. And it seems like there's a trading range between 3.3 and almost 3.0, around 3.1, 3.05. So just play that range. Right now it's trading at 3.26. You have more probability of it going down than up. I just told you how to make some money.
And fueled by tech, I asked the our internal AI model about what it's been year to date. IG, $1.1 trillion through the first half. That's already surpassed the full year totals for 2019, 2022, and 2023, and on pace to etch in a new record itself since 2025. High yield, something similar, $213 billion in the first half. So that puts it also on pace to exceed some of the banner years we've seen in the past. Nimrit, do you expect that to change at all? Or are these funding markets going to remain wide and open for the hyperscalers and all these AI-related companies to continue to issue debt?
The experience is the markets remain open until they don't, right? And that's where one of the things that we worry about is the strong correlations between the equity and the corporate debt markets that we're seeing now that were not true, let's say, even 5-10 years ago. So you used to have the corporate investment grade as a diversifier in a way to your equity exposures. Now you're basically taking the same exposure all the way through, and that is a little bit of concern. That's why it is, incumbent upon people like me to make sure we know what we're buying when we're buying into some of these different bond funds and ETFs and corporate grade funds.
Does it change the attractiveness? Obviously, these funds that you're referring to still are underweight tech, especially compared to the equity market. They still are heavy finance and financial firms. But does the profile and the interest and the diversification properties of putting bonds and pairing that with equities change as you do start to get a steady take-up of weighting towards tech companies?
Yeah. So I think that ultimately comes down to if you're playing at different parts of the same capital structure, you're not getting the diversification. I think the one way to think about it, Danny, is yes, all of this works when we are, the market is still very positive on the AI build out. All of this works. When it sours on that, you're not going to see the kind of benefits that you need to see from your.
First of all, if you notice, everyone that is being interviewed on Bloomberg is doing something in their living room or even worse in their bedroom with their Zoom call, all right? Secondly, most of them don't really dress appropriate, but whatever. This Kang, North Star Asset Management Chief Investment Officer, I guarantee you that their portfolio makes less than mine. Guaranteed. Now, let's think about this for a second, all right? Now, it's all about understanding the system dynamics. They make money by getting investor money and charging you a fee. And they hope to maybe make 3% more than the benchmark. What's the benchmark? The S&P 500 usually, but not always. But let's just say the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is up year to date at 8% around. When someone doesn't tell you that they're making 30 or 40% return year to date right now, they're not good. I guarantee you they're not doing that. Because they don't know how to understand, pull away from fundamentals and just watch the system. You can figure out all the physics with the wind blowing in the air, but if you're actually sitting underneath the tree, the wind changes. Why? Well, it's chaos. You'll never be able to understand it, and nor should you. It's like normal not to understand chaos, right? But all you have to do is watch and try to benefit from the pattern. I'll tell you, these people, I've never met an investment manager that I liked because they're all stupid.
Evans, really struggling to get any sort of gain. They have corrected in the month past with an equity index that's down by about 2% as a whole. But again, the quarter still looks good, even with the most recent wobble over the past month. So you have some of these more kind of bond proxy and safety stocks, to just be frank, at the bottom. Real estate, utilities, consumer staples, those not doing well, as infotech is the top returning sector. But again, that's largely NVIDIA. If NVIDIA's up and the chip stocks are up, so too will tech.
Beware of the AI trade. It's going to collapse. We'll go into that. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. Boomer Boost will help with a multitude of systems. It's going to help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. It stacks well with C60. And again, it's about the stacking to really supercharge the anti-aging protocol. Now, with Boomer Boost, you're going to help with your musculature, your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function. You're going to be able to sleep better and get rid of that brain fog. You're going to have more mental clarity. You're going to be able to think faster and have better memory. They'll help with your cardiovascular system by bringing down inflammation and soaking up those free radicals. You're reducing plaque formation. You're helping to supercharge your energy levels, so your ATP will improve. You're going to have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day without any spiking. And you're going to be able to rev up your cellular metabolism. So you're going to be able to control your weight, and you're going to have more musculature. And by building up more musculature, you're also helping with brain function. How, Dr. Paul Cottrell? How does that work? You're going to be increasing BDNF, and you're increasing myokines, and those are neuroprotective. So actually building muscle actually helps with your brain. Not only that, helping with your calf muscles will allow for better venous return flow. Your calves are like a second heart. They'll help to pump the blood out of your lower extremities. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. You can take it separately. This is a month supply. It's really important to take every day. But stack it also with the C60 to get that synergistic benefit. And you're going to notice that you're slowing down the aging process. Your skin will improve, your hair, your nails. Now, this will have all the vitamins and minerals and other supplements that will help you slow down the aging process. This is your multivitamin, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take this every day. Now, why did I say stay away from, be careful, I shouldn't say stay away, but be careful of NVIDIA, Oracle, OpenAI, Anthropic, all these companies. We need to pay attention to the historical precedents of 1873. And when the railroads were being built and the trusts blew up and the funding mechanism blew up and the revenue started to decline, a lot of people were hurt. Now, it's going to be a rhyme. It's not going to be the exact same thing, but this AI build out is very similar to the railroad industry in its early days. And we'll have AI, we'll have a larger capability of compute and all this, but be aware there's a bubble that's forming. So I kind of try to either start saving a little bit of cash, all right? You still go into the S&P 500, but have some cash on hand. And if you want to be a little bit adventurous, use that cash, wait until you start seeing analysts downgrade NVIDIA. Or this talk about the circular financing that will be happening. Now that circular financing is similar, it's different, but it's a little similar to where you had trusts investing in the railroad system and the railroad system issuing commercial paper to try to finance the build out. And then all of a sudden they couldn't finance anymore. And it was a small pool of people that are doing this. And the banks were issuing trusts with no backing. And then the banks went belly up. So there was a crisis that took place in 1873. Something similar is coming. The AI bubble is not the internet bubble. The AI bubble is more like the railroad bubble. Pay attention now. If you want to be adventurous, have a little bit of money on hand, gotta be patient, wait for those downgrades, and then start going into ETFs that shorts NVIDIA. and just start shorting the hell out of NVIDIA, and you'll make a ton of money. Same thing with SpaceX. Exact same thing is going to happen. Now, you can't do it right now, but just be patient. It's going to happen. Now, I know that this is going to happen because I'm talking to people that are in the investment world in New York that are waiting for this to happen, waiting to capitalize on this. So the sharks are already there. They're just waiting.
Wave of momentum. So this is kind of part two of the AI wave this decade, where memory and storage have led those games, Seagate, Micron, etc. It has not been NVIDIA and the other computer or AI accelerator providers that have driven this part of it. What's interesting is, like, there's also a cautionary tale in the data. I don't know if you guys have the longer term chart you can put back again, but you know, this is the best quarter ever. But if you go back to the March quarter of the year 2000, it was a kind of similar story, that semiconductors would kind of have infinite momentum because of the advent of the internet. And that was like peak dot-com bubble. But the belief at the time was that people would buy computers and there would be growth in computer markets forever and ever. And that just, of course, didn't happen. So there's a long way to run in the second half of 2026. And capital expenditure growth is where people watch for to try and decide if that continues.
I also just wonder, sort of a sentiment check for this market and where we are, how big of a deal SK Hynix is going to be. They applied to file for a NASDAQ IPO, so like the application to do the application, but it is going to be one of these biggest ever listings, Ed, at a moment where a lot of listings are coming to market.
So there's like two parts of the story though. SK needs money so that they can increase fab capacity for memory. SK dominates high bandwidth memory. I think they have almost 60% market share. But what's really interesting about what you just said, right now the SOX is trading at something like 25 or 26 times forward earnings. Historically, it's more like 15 to 19. So we're not like that far off kind of the norm. But one reason that SK is looking at listing US shares and having ADRs is that they traded a valuation discount to Micron, which is actually pretty reasonably priced. SK is basically saying to itself, like, if we give ourselves some exposure to the American investor, like, will we get the credit that we think we're due on the valuation and close that gap to peers Micron and Samsung, given that they are the main beneficiaries of this trade right now? But also, again, go back to capital expenditures. There's a big distinction between CapEx receivers and CapEx deployers. And, you know, it's just logical that the memory names would be big beneficiaries of continued CapEx growth.
And elsewhere, just in this ecosystem, there's a story about Blackstone offloading the stake in 3 of their Northern Virginia data centers. I mean, this has been interesting because they've held this for less than 3 years, I believe. And just the returns, I think, are going to be interesting on these various deals.
They're unloading data centers? Interesting.
In data centers in Virginia.
So from Blackstone's perspective, this is very much monetizing the stake and getting returns rather than exiting that market altogether or exiting even the partnership that was put in place. Essentially, like, the deal structure is that Digital Realty pays them cash, like $1 billion, but also $2.3 billion of their in stock that Blackstone then goes and sells immediately.
I actually met the guy that actually is doing this deal. All right. And the reason why Blackstone is going into this realm is due to the idea of buy land, build a center, hook up the energy to it. Now, there are different ways of doing that, either generation energy on site or mostly hooking up to natural gas facilities that are in the surrounding area, and then leasing it out to a hyperscaler like Oracle or OpenAI or Microsoft or whatever. And they look at this as a real estate deal. It's almost like you go in, you create an industrial park, lots of buildings, and you just lease them out to companies that need that light manufacturing. Something very similar. And the reason why they don't want to go into the data centers is because, you know what? Those data centers, once they're built, they're already out of date. The chip development from NVIDIA is fast paced.
Have actually been built and those that are being cancelled, right? So like, that's the economic story, that there's potential economic gain and jobs, but a lot of these projects, there have been no shovels in the ground at all. And so like, that's one area that people are frustrated with, again, with the near-term energy inflation impact that those that are coming online are having in zip codes like the one Blackstone's operating in.
And thank you very much for all of that. Really looking forward to Bloomberg Tech. Airs at 11 a.m. with host Ed Ludlow. Coming up, the hedge fund industry is booming, and Izzy Englander's Millennium is placing its bet on the next wave of talent. All the latest moves coming up.
Another issue with the data centers is communities are saying, not in my backyard. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the resveratrol. Resveratrol will help with youthful gene expression, help you to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Those cells that are just sitting there, not dividing, they collect lipofuscin, that's garbage, and that's really bad for your tissues. So you need to get rid of those. You need to take resveratrol. Resveratrol will help with the basal layer of your skin. Resveratrol will soak up free radicals. And by soaking up free radicals, you're helping the health of the mitochondria, so you'll have more energy. This stacks really well with C60, especially for the basal layer. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol, and stack it with the C60. Another great combo that stacks with C60 is lignans, ashwagandha root, and turmeric. Now, lignans brings down inflammation, soaks up free radicals. Same thing with turmeric. And lignans will help the immune system and the endocrine system. Ashwagandha root will help to control the cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels, bring down inflammation, help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Stack these together, very powerful stack, especially with the turmeric and the C60. And what you will notice is that your immune system and your endocrine system is even more supercharged. See, the way your body works with biochemistry, it's not about taking one supplement, one thing. There's feedback loops, and there's different compounds that will help to enhance the biochemistry and improve the health of the cell. So you want to attack this from different angles, different compounds, different ways. The goal is to slow down aging. What are some of the things that you need to deal with? Energy levels, bone density, cardiovascular health, neural health, immune system. So you have to attack it a multitude of ways, not just take vitamin D3 or just take a multivitamin. There's ways to the magic of you will get healthy by just taking a multivitamin. You'll get healthy by taking a couple supplements. But if you really want to do this anti-aging, which works, it's synergy. The whole point is synergy. But it's not just with the supplements, it's also the lifestyle. Filtered water, stay away from sugary foods, proper sleep, proper exercise, heavier on the resistance training instead of the cardio. Too many people just do cardio. It's actually bad for you. If you only do cardio, wrong. If you only do resistance training, wrong. You want about a 60-40 or 70-30 split, heavier on, more weighted on the resistance training. You need to do balancing exercises and stretching exercises. That's going to help with your cerebellum and help with gait issues later in life. And by doing that resistance training, you're building denser bone and improving your posture, getting better lymphatic flow, better venous return flow. Learning new things stimulates the brain, talking to people. When you do this in a holistic way, you slow down the aging process. And there's a lot of research that proves what I'm saying is right. Probiotics, another important feature to slowing down the aging process. It starts at the gut. Good gut health. So improve your food intake, improve your water by filtering, and get a good probiotic. You can get the probiotics from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get the powdered version, which is the way I take it, or the veggie cap version. Either one will help you. Now, what it will do is improve your gut biome. You'll be able to absorb your nutrients better. You'll have less inflammation. You'll have a better immune system at the gut level. You'll have a thicker mucosal layer. You'll have a stronger lining of the gut. You're going to be reducing allergies. You're going to be reducing leaky gut syndrome. You'll be improving your skin and your hair and your nails, because that also is related to your gut health. You can tell by someone that has poor skin that they have poor gut. You know, if you're a trained physician, you can look at someone physically, not touch them, not do any lab work, and see what sort of problems that individual has by just looking at them. So improving your gut will help with that. Will help with improving your body. Your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve, even brain function, because a good gut biome will allow you to get into the better sleep pattern. And when you have a better sleep pattern, you're going to be able to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, which is super important, and you'll be well rested. So taking a good probiotic helps with all these different systems. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the probiotics, the lignans, the ashwagandha root, the resveratrol, the turmeric, stack them with the C60. And by doing that, you are supercharging your anti-aging protocol. Now you can customize this to your liking, but the key here is synergy. Synergy. And that's how biochemistry works. It's synergy. Everyone's so focused on one compound or one pathway. Wrong. It's a multitude of pathways.
Biggest challenge and problem, there is no capacity in the hedge fund space, at least with the bigger firms, to take in another $10 billion.
All things considered, probably a good problem to have. Nishant, thank you so much for joining. Excellent story. I highly recommend everyone go read it. That's Bloomberg's Nishant Kumar. Coming up in the next hour, Joanne Feeney of Advisors Capital. She shares her top picks as we close out the quarter. Plus, we're going to hear from the CEO of Chuck E. Cheese, Scott Drake. The E stands for entertainment, if you did not know. And then we head to Sintra for a conversation with ECB policymaker Ollie Red. That's coming up in hour 2 of Open Interest.
Iran rejects face-to-face talks with U.S. Lovely. America's biggest China problem may have just hit a turning point. Let's listen to that from the Business Channel of Fox.
The U.S. Army partnering with Canadian miner Titan Mining along with U.S.-based permanent magnet company Realloys to develop critical minerals processing facilities at home. The move part of a broader Pentagon effort to secure defense supply chains and reduce reliance on China for materials used in weapons, batteries, and advanced manufacturing. Realloys also in exclusive Army contract talks to develop a heavy rare earth processing facility at the Tuolumne Army Depot in Utah. The planned facilities will refine heavy rare earths, including those essential to national security, and of course those used in the defense industrial manufacturing base. Joining me right now is Realloys CEO Lippy Sternheim. Lippy, great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here, and congratulations.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've been talking about critical minerals on this program for a long time, and we know that President Trump has made this a priority. Tell us more about this partnership. What specific metals are you focused on?
So in rare earths, there are lights and heavies. Heavies would be the dysprosium and the terbium, the ones that go into everything the military uses, from F-35, submarines, missiles, drones. Heavies are where the temperatures need to be higher, so as you can Imagine anything that's operating at much higher temperatures, such as fighter jets and things, have the heavy rare earths. Currently, China controls the entire supply chain of rare earths for heavies, which is with the processing, the refining, the metallizing, magnet making. And we are focused on making sure that this is brought to North American shores, and we do the full supply chain in North America between the US and Canada.
I'm with Ryan Payne this morning. Ryan, jump in.
Well, you made a good point. 80–90% is refined in China right now with these heavy rare earths. I guess the concern becomes at some point, if we start up our facilities here, does China just start dumping on the market again like they did historically, and that basically wiped out all the other players? What's your protection against that?
So there's a law coming into effect on January 1st, 2027, goes by DFARS, which is that the U.S. defense space, but the defense industrial base and the U.S. defense cannot procure anything that has a Chinese nexus, which is a law in effect. This is not an executive order or anything, it's the law. So that, I think, in our case, in our scenario, would help us protect us against that. As far as in the light business and those things, the government is, which is for the EVs and things like that, the light rare earths, the government has put in price floors to some companies, and you've seen it in the news when they did a deal with two other companies and put a floor price of a floor in effect. So that would protect you against the price dumping.
Well, look, the Trump administration is celebrating a major win against China in African rare earth minerals. The U.S. backing American company Virtus Minerals to develop 2 cobalt and copper mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. That project would be the first U.S.-backed critical minerals investment in the country since the president announced the Washington Accord back in December, as Beijing currently holds 44 million metric tons of critical minerals reserves compared to America's nearly 2 million. China now tightening its rare earth grip on U.S. firms by imposing new export restrictions on certain rare earth metals to U.S. companies. That affects NP Materials and USA Rare Earth, both key recipients of U.S. government support. Lippy, what are your thoughts on these restrictions from China? And how is it possible that the U.S. is so reliant on China for these things? How did this happen?
So we gave away, for cost reasons, I guess, over the last 40 years, over the last 4 decades, we've given away things to go fast and cheap and hard, and gave away in the process the fundamental security that we had with controlling things that we have. Currently, China controls, for the most part, all the refining and processing rare earth. As you know, President Trump said rare earth is not so rare. It's not it's not the rocks that are rare. It's the processing and refining, which are complicated technologies. It's also not a clean business, so to speak, so we let it go there, with today's environmental permitting and things like that. What we've done in that context is we've created cleaner, more efficient, American ingenuity, put together a flow. So today, the processing that we have, for example, just to throw out an example, hydrofluoric acid, which is one of the dirty parts or the unclean, dangerous parts of the business, we've created a hydrofluoric acid-free version. But for the most part, in the general sense, all the processing, everything was offshore in the last 4 decades. We're slowly bringing it back. But there is a deadline, DFARS, which is, as I said, on January 1st, 2027, defense industrial base cannot buy anything with the Chinese nexus. The reason the military partnership is so important, because that gives the country the security it needs. Nothing is reliant on other countries after that. We're building it here. We're building it with a partnership with the Army on their bases. That's how important this is for national security.
All right, so breaking news, U.S. June consumer confidence is at 91.2. Estimate was 9.4. And the U.S. May job openings will be, the U.S. job openings were 7.59 million. Estimate was 7.29 million. So job openings are increased. The S&P 500 is
metallizing for the BLA for many years. Different products in rare earths, in exotic rare earths, and putting that supply chain together now, aside from what you hear from the government, they're putting money. As you know, Trump, he's giving a lot of companies money. This administration, Department of War, Congress, the OFC, the DFC, there's many pockets of the government that are funding different components of this business. And I think you're going to see a difference. I don't think you'll see it overnight, Maria. I don't think it'll happen in a week or two. But I think in the next year, 2 years, and going to 2030, I think this problem with China won't be a problem in as much as it is today, and would be long on the way of being sustainable on our own.
Oh, that's
you see the military doing a partnership. I was going to say, when you see the military doing a partnership without putting this processing on their own land, they want it in their purview, and bringing the military, the permitting that happens there is a lot easier with the whole army infrastructure, making it easier for companies. You see it with us, you see with the other 3 companies that were announced in this partnership. As you said, in Africa, you see it this morning. You see when the Chinese Silk Road Initiative, we're taking that initiative now, going and partnering with companies in other countries. That's all bringing it home to America, thanks to the vision of Trump and his administration.
Yeah, well, these are all national security issues, so we understand. Libby, it's great to have you this morning. We'll be watching your work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Libby Sternheim joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Mornings with Maria live on Fox Business.
Okay. Let's see here. Some additional news. All right. GOP pushes crackdown on China-linked universities.
Hey, before you skip this ad, this is John Ossoff in Georgia, and I'm the only Democratic U.S. Senator running for re-election in the state that Donald.
The stockpile of near bomb-grade uranium. Meanwhile, the House Rules Committee voting to advance the $1.1 trillion defense budget bill to the floor for debate. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, told me on Sunday he plans to combine Pentagon funding with the Save America Act and send it to the Senate as one piece of legislation. But Republicans are facing an uphill battle to regain control of the House floor after Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna led a blockade on the floor. She said Johnson's plan is not sufficient. She wants the Senate to pass Save America Act. Joining me now is Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. He sits on the House Armed Services Committee and is a U.S. Air Force veteran. Congressman, as I always, thank you for your great service to this great nation. I'll do it again. We appreciate your work. What can you tell us about the briefing?
Well, we all want to see the Save America Act passed. The NDAA is a separate function of that. And Iran's in a perilous position, and the United States is, believe it or not, in a strong position. And I know if you read a lot of the mainstream media, they don't want to acknowledge that, but that is the case. And we also know that the regime isn't to be trusted. So any agreement needs to be a trust but verified. And I think Secretary Rubio, more than anyone, is aware of that.
Well, I mean, the defense package is clearly needed. I mean, we have depleted our weapons. What are your thoughts in terms of the defense package? Are you supportive of what the Pentagon is asking?
100%. I mean, this is the largest single piece of legislation as far as monetary value that's been passed in history, or will be. It was passed up committee, but we're going to vote on today. $1.15 trillion. We need to expand our deterrence. We need to increase our military defense. This does have a pay increase for our soldiers and sailors and airmen, and that's something that I think is vital as well. But it's it's an increasingly dangerous world, Maria, and it's shrinking every day as well. We have to counter the threats that North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, and others present.
Oh, I understand that fully, but we're also trying to ensure that we have safe elections. I mean, the Supreme Court made a ruling 5-4 that states can accept mail-in ballots up to 5 days after the federal election day is over. President Trump posted on Truth Social soon after the result, the fact that people's votes are allowed to be counted long after an election is over, writes the president. It is more important than ever to pass the Save America Act. President Trump has made this his top agenda item, and yet the Senate continues to blow it off. The bill has been held up in the Senate for months now. Speaker Mike Johnson joined me on Sunday, and here's what he said about the delay in the Senate. Watch. The Senate is gone until July 13th. They left without even a budget released. It's hard to think anything really gets done beyond that $87.6 billion supplemental for defense, especially since the parliamentarian already said, look, you've got to prove that you're actually looking at spending cuts if you're going to put the Save America Act in there.
That's right, and we've been looking at that very carefully, and we'll send them over a provision that fits and passes the Berg test, as they call it over there, with the parliamentarian. And look, I met with Leader Thune. He's a good man. He's got a big challenge on his hands, of course, and I've encouraged him to do everything possible within his power to move it. I believe he will, Maria. He understands how important that is as well. Election integrity is critical. It's central. You know, we talk about preserving the republic. You got to have free and fair elections in order to do that, and we can't allow big blue states and crooked, Democrat governors to try to steal elections away from us. And
Congressman, your reaction?
No, to be clear, Maria, I'm absolutely in favor of attaching the Save America Act with the NDA because it is so vital. And to quote my very good friend and soon-to-be next governor of Florida, Byron Donalds, the Senate sucks. Why in the world have they not put this, I think they should have done a walking filibuster with it. They certainly can attach it to the Save America Act to the NDA, and if the Senate parliamentarian, for whatever reason, does overrule it, or it does try to throw it out, they can overrule that, and they still have the filibuster intact. So this is absolutely something vital, and the president is right as well. The Supreme Court got it wrong, that you are going to allow people to accept ballots after Election Day. That makes absolutely no sense, and it really makes a mockery of our republic.
Yeah, but you recently introduced the Espionage Protection Act. It would amend the National Security Act of 1947, prohibit federal funding for intelligence programs at universities, which maintain contractual relationships with organizations tied to the CCP. This is very dangerous. Tell us more.
Mm-hmm. No, it's absolutely dangerous. I mean, you had the head of the chemistry department in Harvard, Charles Lieber, investigated and charged, and lo and behold, we find that the United States gave him $15 million for research, and he had a Chinese bank account. There's too many instances, there's scores of them across the country where Chinese students are coming over and stealing secrets, or they're co-opting American citizens. So if you're linked with the Confucius Institute, the Thousand Talents Program, or certain Chinese universities that are dominated by the CCP, you're no longer going to be eligible for funding from the
1,000 Talent Program. That's passé. It's the 10,000 Talent Program now. It's 10 times bigger.
Community in this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, how is it possible that if you are talking about the CCP undermining America over and over again from all ends, that we would be funding that to begin with?
People have been asleep at the switch. I mean, 20 years ago, well, I say 20 years ago, but there were many people that believed that if we can integrate economically with China, then the world will be safer and there'll be a good player, and there'll be a good actor on the world stage. That has proven to be completely false. And then you have people like Joe Biden, as recently as a few years ago, saying that a strong and vibrant economic China is in the United States' best interest. No, it's not, because they are showing clearly that their intent is, global hegemony, and we have got to counter that. And this is one good first step to do that.
Yeah. So let me get your take on what happens next, Congressman, in terms of policy, because you only have a couple of days here in terms of legislative days left before certainly the August recess, but certainly the midterm elections as well. Realistically speaking, what do you think gets done?
Realistically, I do think, Maria, that I can only speak for the House, and I pray that the Senate will follow suit, but I think we can pass our 10 appropriations bills, and I think we will pass the NDAA. Certainly the Save America Act will pass out of the House again, and then it's up to the Senate to get it done on their end. So I am cautiously optimistic. I'm the perpetual optimist. I mean, if I fell off, so good so far. So we'll see how it goes.
All right, Congressman, we'll be watching. Thanks so much. Happy 4th of July.
It's so stupid because you will die when you hit the ground. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, detoxify your body. And building muscle is super important for your musculature, building up your better posture, helping with the flow of your lymphatic system, helping with venous return flow when you build stronger calves. Improve your back posture, really important. Build up those back muscles. And by building up more musculature, you're going to be helping with brain function because you're increasing your myokines and increasing the concentration of BDNF, which are neuroprotective. So please go to my store, get the Gladiator Barley. You can stack this with C60 and the Boomer Boost. Omega-3, super important for cardiovascular health. This will help to bring down inflammation, help to control your lipid profile, and reduce the over-stickiness of red blood cells. You should be taking it every day. Vitamin B complex, super important to take every day if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? Because this will help to rev up your cellular metabolism, improve your energy levels by increasing the health of your mitochondria and helping with the electron transport chain to produce more ATP. And vitamin B12 helps to protect nerves. Vitamin C and magnesium helps with brain function, helps with the immune system, and helps with your skin. This will cross-link with the collagen. Drink filtered water, take the vitamin C, take the collagen. It will help with the dermal layer of your skin. Magnesium and zinc helps with brain function and helps with the immune system. It's very important, especially in the aftershock of what we went through in 2020, to increase your magnesium levels to improve your brain function. Pay attention to me. I know what I'm talking about, right? Just people are not taking enough magnesium. So I recommend taking the magnesium and zinc and stacking it with the vitamin C and magnesium. And again, all of these supplements that I just mentioned can stack with the C60. You want to target inflammation, soak up those free radicals. You want to slow down the aging process by boosting up your immune system. See, a lot of people, they just don't pay attention. It's about controlling the free radicals and the inflammation. Boosting up the health of the mitochondria. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. But if you do this regularly, you will get healthy. All right. Early on in the session, I was talking about the S&P 500. And I put a position in pre-market, and I closed it out for the S&P 500 and made money. See, if you just listen to me, you will make money. So it behooves you to pay attention. And maybe if you listen to me on the supplement side, you will actually be healthier when you get older, so you don't have to be so dependent on pharmacopoeia. Okay, next. Iran creating leverage by saying they alone will determine the strait. You know what? I'm not very happy with what's happening with the Strait of Hormuz and this whole MOU. It seems that Trump failed and that the Iranians are more in control of what's really going on with the Strait. That's my take on it. I think Trump failed on dealing. Now, some people think, oh, we should never have gone into the war and all that. No, we should have gone into the war, but we should have killed the IRGC. Made sure that none of the theocratic regime lasts, and then work with the international community to rebuild the nation while we were controlling the oil and the natural gas and using those revenues to actually rebuild the nation and total level Tehran. And not to do it with smart bombs, actually use it with cheap gravity bombs and just level Tehran. That's what I would have done. And also, you could have totally leveled the strait. Totally. Those islands up in the northern part of the strait, you could have leveled with gravity bombs. You could have leveled that whole arc of the shoreline and have the Marines and have the airborne control the region with air support. No. Have to have the really expensive smart bombs, call it epic fury, and not get anything done. It was epic failure, not epic fury. Stupid. I think that there was a battle in the Civil War that had the same kind of similar topology, but everything was smaller. It was across a river. I'd have to look it up, but it was either Chattanooga or I want to say maybe Vicksburg. I have to look it up. I don't remember, but there was lessons learned during the Civil War, what needed to happen. And guess what? Our military decided not to do it. Okay. So they didn't learn from the Civil War, and we didn't have any generals that were willing to be a little bit more like Grant. They were too worried about what the international community thought. We should have had the stance, unconditional surrender, or the enemy will be completely gone. Those are your only two paths. Which one do you want? But you have this whole, the Iranians, they're mobsters. They don't understand anything but destruction and power projection. Kill them. Nope, afraid to do it. Trump, afraid to do it. You have all of these people in America that are pacifists, America First pacifists. I'm an America First expansionist.
This one. Things could get seriously awkward for American negotiators in Doha, Qatar today. The White House says Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are there to lead talks to end the war with Iran, now in month 5. But Iran's deputy minister says
you ever wonder why it's Jared and Witkoff? Why? Now, I think it's not because of their intellect or their prowess in geopolitics. Trump doesn't trust the State Department. Trump doesn't trust the CIA. Trump doesn't trust the Pentagon. He only trusts his little circle of people. And he put them in place because he only trusts them. But I think that Jared is incompetent.
Will be there on site, but there will not be direct talks with the United States. The Iranians say their goal is to talk with the mediating countries about making sure the U.S. sticks to its commitments in the Memorandum of Understanding. The U.S. and Iran signed that thing 2 weeks ago, and of course, there's been a whole lot of activity between now and then. Joining me now, Lieutenant General Mark Hartman, a retired commander of the U.S. Army Europe, and MS now military analyst. Sam and Damien are still with us. General, we obviously turn to you first. What do you see going on with these mixed messages?
We are still in the MOU phase, Stephanie, the roadmap phase. And as you just said, Qatar says the U.S. envoys are there, but there aren't any planned direct meetings with Iranian officials. Qatar described the current activities as technical meetings on regional security that could later move to higher level talks. That's their reporting. But Iran also denied Trump's claim that the talks were scheduled, saying there are, quote, no negotiations at any level with the U.S. in the coming days. So, what I'd say is I'm going to keep going back to we are still in the MOU phase. It's the framework phase. It's where diplomacy is focused on potential issues, the technical issues that Qatar talked about. But Oman is also working a separate framework for the long-term strait management. And they're talking about a variety of things that don't seem to be on either Secretary Rubio or President Trump's itinerary.
Let's stay on the strait management front, because an Iranian official says that they will exclusively be responsible for taking the mines out of the strait. How's the U.S. going to respond to that, and what does it mean for the future of the strait, General?
Yeah, that's going to be difficult. There's a couple things associated with that, Stephanie, which have to do with the technical agreements of what happens when the strait is demined. Demining is, when they say it's carried out exclusively by Iran and no other country, they're responding to a message from Emmanuel Macron in France, who said he was prepared to work with Oman and partners on demining operations. And from a military and diplomatic perspective, this is much more than a technical question. Iran is trying to preserve sovereignty over the strait. Tehran is reinforcing its broader agreement that this is not an international coalition that's going to take care of their waterways, but it also creates leverage. And I think that's the most important part when you're talking about negotiations. If Iran can certify that the strait is safe, it gains influence over commercial traffic movement, insurance rates, and the pace of economic normalization. Especially that last point.
You know, here you have all of the military experts, and you have all of the political pundits, and the international affairs gurus, and they're all kind of trying to slowly normalize this. The reality of the situation is that Trump failed. He failed, and now maritime freedom of navigation laws are in question in all regions of the world. Thanks, Trump. What are we going to do with the Strait of Malacca? What are we going to do with the 9-dash line or the 10-dash line? What are we going to do about that, Trump? You a tough guy? You a tough guy? You're going to stop China from closing that in and calling it an economic zone, and then there's no freedom of navigation now? What are you going to do then, Trump? Trump failed. And the military in the United States failed because they didn't take the lessons learned from the Civil War and how to conduct war. And Trump thought he knew it all. Trump thought it was going to be a cakewalk. Iran, the ones that run it, know nothing but force. And the only way you deal with these people is to kill them. No, Trump thought that he was going to be able to be a master negotiator. The Iranians are better negotiators than Trump. We literally are now unraveling, 200 years? Thereabouts? Of maritime law? Crazy. That's what just happened. That's exactly what happened. And I attended an event yesterday where it was an Iranian hostage, American, that was, I'd have to look up his name. I'll look it up and then let you know. He was the one that was interviewed on CNN while he was in captivity for 8 years with Christian Amanpour. It was during the Obama administration when he was captured. He was in business. He was doing business in I think UAE, and somehow he was detained. Now I'm not sure where he was detained in. Maybe it was when he was actually in Iran visiting, and then he was detained. I think that's what happened. This was before the actual nuclear deal. Then the nuclear deal is taking shape under Kerry, Secretary Kerry, John Kerry. And this individual, I don't remember his name, I have to look it up. This hostage was promised that he was going to be let go 3 weeks after the signing of the deal. Guess what? The Obama administration let him rot in a jail for years. Then Trump comes in and they try to get him out. They couldn't, because he was one of those very well-heeled, important hostages. He was leverage for the Iranians for negotiations with the State Department of the United States, and they kept him. And they let other hostages of lesser value through back into the country and back into the United States. So Trump tried to get him out. And then eventually, I believe what happened was that he had his actual interview with Christian Amanpour during the Biden administration. And then eventually he was let out. But what he said last night, because I saw him last night, What he said to the audience was this: it's not about a theocratic regime. This was the shocker to me. It's not about the theocratic regime. There's infighting because it's these little circles of influence that are of a mob mentality. So it's like a mob structure. And if one of the leaders in a group are weakened, the other groups start to take hold for power. So it's an infighting of a group of mobsters. Well, how are you going to handle that? Now, we have seen something similar in inner cities in the United States during the 80s and the 90s. You have to clean it up, and you have to go in with force and destroy it all. Destroy their infrastructure, get them on tax fraud, or, there's shootouts and all this stuff. To destroy the Iranian regime, they have to be killed. You cannot negotiate. They have to be killed. And this is where Trump lost. He thinks he can make a deal. You can't make a deal. They have to die. I'll look up what his name was, but I'm telling you, Iran, our military fucked up, and our president, our State Department failed.
That leverage will become another bargaining chip in the negotiations when they eventually get underway. But it's also a military problem. It's a verification problem. Mine warfare is one of the most technically demanding naval missions, and modern influence mines, the so-called echo mines and some of the other ones that have, can remain dangerous long after combat ends, and proving an area is completely safe or clear is much harder than just saying, hey, we've cleared the area. It's tough. It's tough work. And I think if Iran continues to control that issue, it's going to take a long time, and they're going to continue to trade space for time in terms of these negotiations.
Well, yesterday, Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff briefed Congress on Iran and the state of these talks. And I want to share what Congresswoman Madeline Dean told my colleague Jonathan Capehart about that call last night.
I did ask a set of questions to the Secretary and to Mr. Witkoff, which really piqued his
This individual that I met yesterday, he also said that Witkoff and Kushner are incompetent. All right, so what was his name? Simak Namasi. Simak Namasi. All right? And he gave a really important insight on what's behind the scenes. And he stated, with the MOU, everyone's read it, it's 14 points and all this stuff. Where is the dialogue on any of the news networks about the current hostages in Iran that are American citizens? And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the State Department are letting them rot, and Trump doesn't want to look like he failed. So he's not bringing it up. Another example where Trump doesn't get up to the podium and take responsibility. A real leader says, this is the problem, I tried, I failed, this is what we're going to do to try to fix it, but we are going to win. That's a leader. Instead of, well, let's not talk about that. Let's make lies. Let's not bring up that Iran is holding American hostages right now. Trump's a fucking failure. And I'm shocked that the news networks aren't talking about this. I had no idea that there were American hostages in Iran right now, that the State Department's trying to get out, but they're using them as leverage. And why is it that no one's talking about this? Why? Who are the hostages? Who are they? Trump can go play on the golf course and eat more Big Macs and get fatter. Meanwhile, people are starving in prisons in Iran. It's not just saving the people that were protesting the regime and that were being killed, which is an atrocity, and that the Americans need to destroy this regime to allow for a constitutional republic to flourish. But it's to get our own people out. Our own people, our American citizens, we do not leave them behind. Where's the discussion on this? Trump wants to sugarcoat it.
Here, he cut my mic off and said that he called my question smart-assed and stupid, cut my mic off and said, there's your answer. I asked Mr. Witkoff, I said, in your work, how much of your work in the region is for the United States of America and resolving these issues, and how much of your time is being spent on your own ventures? That, I think, really tipped them off, and that's when I got cut off.
Smart ass, stupid. This sounds like it might be a sore spot for Steve Witkoff. What do you think, Damien?
I think the White House, President Trump and Steve Witkoff and others are extremely sensitive. And to what the general was saying, I think they're shocked at how little leverage they have right now. This is the first time really in 6 years of Trump's presidency where he doesn't have leverage over an adversary in a really tense negotiation. And so we saw the president a few weeks ago kind of lash out at critics from the left and the right saying, you're making my job harder by all this. He used the word chirping. And I think they're shocked that it continues to be so problematic for them to get leverage against the Iranians, and all these questions from Congress, really from both sides. That was a Democratic congresswoman. We're hearing a lot of questions from Republicans too. These questions are just piling up. And so the more questions that the Iranians see the White House is facing, it kind of strengthens the hand of the Iranians, and these negotiations get even harder and harder. So the president has said this whole thing's over, the strait is open. It's obviously not. The Iranians still, with their kind of fractured government, have a lot more leverage than many people thought they would. And the more Congress is involved, and they're going to get more and more involved, and after November, potentially extremely involved, it's going to make the White House's opportunities much smaller.
All right, new topic before I let you gentlemen leave. The president was asked yesterday if he is going to sign that bipartisan affordable housing bill that Speaker Johnson sent to the White House, and I want to share for you what he said.
I don't know. I think it's so unimportant by compared to the state of America. It hasn't been sent to me yet. It's coming, I understand, and then I'll make it. Here's what I would like to say. Much more than a bill, that big deal. It's a yawn.
It's a yawn. I want to make sure everybody heard that. He called the affordable housing bill addressing the affordability crisis in this country a yawn and unimportant. Sam, this of course comes not long after the president said he doesn't think about the economic impact of the war on Americans. He loves inflation. His party cannot love.
I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm glad he's president relative to Harris. But the problem here is that Trump's not paying attention to people's needs. The people need the government to dampen inflation. That there is an affordability crisis in the United States. There needs to be regulation on AI. And you know what? We don't leave our citizens in captivity overseas. Now, there are a lot of people out there that remember what happened with the POWs during Vietnam. It was a shame to not fully make sure that all of our soldiers were brought home. But because of expedience, there were individuals left behind in Vietnam. Now, that's not the case in Iran. In my understanding, it's not military personnel, but what we have are business individuals, diplomats of a lower tier level that are captured, that are held hostage. Where is it? Where's the discussion on this? I want someone to actually ask the president during these gaggles, how many American citizens are in captivity in Iran right now? And I bet it's more than 10. And the next question would be, what the fuck are you doing to get them back? We need leaders. So America passive, America first pacifist means leaving our citizens in captivity in Iran? Is that what it means? Trump failed.
It's mind-boggling. I mean, look, the legislation is not as ambitious as a lot of advocates wish it would be, but it's not a yawn. It's a bipartisan, heavily bipartisan bill to increase the availability of housing on the market. And everyone knows that housing costs are one of the key drivers for the affordability crisis. And for the president to dismiss this opportunity to take a laugh by calling it a yawn is such a political stepping on the rake. But this is sort of typical for Trump, obviously. His attention is on a few key issues for him. Obviously, Save America Act is one of them.
Trump is not paying attention to the needs of the people. That's one. Two, the mainstream media, especially the liberal bias one like MS Now, which is playing, they're also have their own agenda. You know, want to demonize Trump, that Trump can't do anything right. But the thing is Trump has failed this big time. And you have the Republican Party that's not willing to actually get some balls and say, you know what, we need to bolster up our election process. We got to make sure that American citizens are voting that should be voting, not some foreign national that's voting illegally. So why can't the Republican Party do their job? You know, Republicans were given the opportunity in 2024 when they won the general election, they won the House, they won the Senate, they won the executive branch to get things done. And it seems as though the Republican Party isn't willing to do that. So why did we give them majority power? See, the problem is the Republican Party, they're given chances to fix things and they never fix it. Because they're disorganized. Where there's infighting, it's easier to fracture them through the lobbying groups. Then you have the Democrats who are more organized, but their policies suck. So you keep on voting, people are trying to vote for Republicans to try to slow down the tyranny of the liberal mindset coming from the Democrats. But when the Republican Party ends up getting control, they can't fix things. The senator, the Senate leader for the Republican Party failed. It's a failure. Thune, a failure. Senator Thune, total failure.
Getting out of this Iran deal and getting gas prices lower is another one of them. And look, I'll just add on to the last conversation. When it comes to leverage, he gave up a significant chunk of leverage when he admitted a couple of weeks ago that he had to get the MOU signed because we were going to have a global energy crisis in 4 weeks. So that's another big priority for him. But the thing that's most baffling is that his real priority seems to be beautification projects in and around Washington, D.C. I mean, last weekend, he visited, I think, 3 or 4, Lafayette Park, one of the golf courses, the site of the new arch. I mean, that is not...
The bottom line is he's superficial. There's no substance. Trump doesn't have some intellectual substance.
It does. But this is where Trump's putting his priorities. And if you're a voter who is worried about costs of living and you see the president say, yeah, this bill, I'm not even going to sign it because it's such a boring piece of legislation. If you're a Republican and you're trying to sell these things, that is just a huge slap in the face. I'm not sure it serves the party particularly well come November.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy with what's going on with Trump. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals. That helps the immune system, the endocrine system. It'll help with joints. If you have arthritis, it'll help to reduce that inflammation. This will help with brain function because it's really important to keep that inflammation down to reduce amyloidosis. Another great way to detoxify your body is to take zeolite. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink with filtered water, do that daily, and what will happen is that you're going to be able to bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals that you've been exposed to, and you'll be able to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Another thing that's really important is clean your environment. Get rid of chemicals and cleaning agents that you don't need that are around the house, like paints and whatever. But if you do need them, make sure that they're in a double layered container to reduce the degassing, so your exposure is reduced. And drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods. So you want to reduce the intake of it, but you also want to bind to what's in your body and get rid of it. This zeolite you can take every day. Some zeolite you can't. This is some of the best stuff that you can get. So please go to my store, get the zeolite, take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, and drink the filtered water. Now, if you want a heavier detox and you only want to do that once a year, take 5 to 10 small drops underneath your tongue, do that daily until you're done with the bottle, and then you just do that once a year or so, once or twice a year. But I recommend the maintenance method, where it's 3 small drops, drink the filtered water. Super strong relief. This is a topical that will reduce pain. If you have arthritis, rub it where you have the pain. If you have a pulled muscle, rub it where you have the pain. If you have a bruise or a sprain, this is a topical that will reduce the pain. If you have a tension headache, this will get rid of that tension headache. Rub it on your temples and your forehead and your shoulders, your shoulder muscles. So please go to my store, get the super strong relief. This will reduce the pain or eliminate the pain within 90 seconds. So please go to my store, get the super strong relief, the heirloom barley, or the zeolite. All right, let's go to CNN talking about the SCOTUS rulings and how it affects the Trump administration.
This idea of continuous reinvention, I think, is really important. It doesn't end. It does not end.
Welcome to
breaking news right now. Interesting. Okay, there's breaking news. The Supreme Court struck down the birthright citizenship case. So let's listen to Al Jazeera.
Moved to do that, but the Supreme Court under the U.S. Constitution is the final say when it comes to the law of the land. So the law of the land now says that any child born in America, regardless of their parents' immigration status, whether they're here on a student visa, any kind of work visa, if they are born in the U.S., they are American citizens with all the rights that entails.
And talk to us about the significance of this decision.
The problem is that you're going to have a lot of people doing vacation visas into the United States and then kicking out a kid, and now they have an American citizen. So China is going to take advantage of this loophole. Stupid.
In the U.S. Supreme Court, which had long been seen as supporting the Trump administration, we seem to have seen a succession of decisions which have gone against the administration. Can you put this into context for us?
This is a very, very conservative court, 6-3, and three of the justices on the court were appointed by the president himself, and they have sought throughout their terms to, while he's been in office, to really make presidential power far greater. We have seen 3 cases that come to mind that the court really rebuked the president. The most important, of course, would be the tariffs, his unilateral tariffs that had an impact across the globe. The Supreme Court said he couldn't use the emergency powers to enact those tariffs, although he has other methods to do it. They're just shorter term, temporary, and it limits the amount of percentage of the tariffs he can do. The other one was yesterday, Lisa Cook, the Federal Reserve governor. The president tried to fire her, and the Supreme Court came out and said, well, they did it the wrong way. They didn't do the due process of it, but that it is important that the Federal Reserve remains independent. Now, this is by far going to be the biggest decision that is going to really upset the president, because
Now, have you noticed that ever since this fiasco with the MOU happened and wasn't getting the job done by killing the Iranian regime, a lot of bad things are starting to happen. Now, this coincides with what I've been saying. There's a curse coming around the world that's going to affect the United States. That's going to start on 9/11/2026. And it's going to last for 2 years. 2 years. And it's just starting to emerge. You can just see it. It's just starting to emerge. Now listen to my episode with John Hogue. We go into detail about this. Some of the metaphysics that are related to it, some of the spirituality that's related to this. But the bottom line is this. There's a curse coming. And there are going to be more things that happen in the news that is going to erode the power of the presidency and embarrass him. And I would not be surprised that we have a Watergate event against Trump. That probability is starting to increase. And Niall Ferguson thinks the same thing. And since he's writing the book on Kissinger, 2-volume series, he's working on the 2nd volume, and he spent a lot of time studying Nixon, he's saying something big's coming.
This was, Americans tend to vote on economic issues, foreign policy decisions of the Supreme Court. They don't tend to have a huge impact. Now, people who are supportive of this policy may be disappointed in the outcome, but I doubt they'll blame the president. They would blame the Supreme Court. Excuse me. And one of the issues here is because it's a constitutional amendment, so it can be changed. It would just need either Congress to vote to put it to the states to reform that amendment, or to have a constitutional convention. The Constitution is a living, breathing document. It can be changed. The court's just saying the president can't unilaterally change this when it comes to birthright citizenship. As far as, is this going to be a huge campaign issue?
Yeah, of course the Congress won't do that. They're not going to make a law that states that, you know what, birthright citizenship should only happen with certain status criteria of the parents. Not vacationers coming to New York and kicking out a kid.
Is controlled by the Sudanese army, which the RSF has been fighting since April 2023.
Let's go back to CNN. We're going to go back to CNN, and they're going to be talking about some of the other losses that Trump had at SCOTUS. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor. You need it so your cells perform properly. Vitamin D3 also helps to get rid of cells that are infected. That's really important. It helps to get cells to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 helps with bone density and cardiovascular health. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3.
Here, obviously, what Rebecca's talking about, there was a significant win for Trump and his efforts to expand executive power. He did, though, suffer today a number of losses at the Supreme Court, including his attempt to overturn the ruling against him in the E. Jean Carroll case, where a federal jury in New York had found the president liable for sexually abusing and defaming Carroll. And Trump responded today on social media saying, "I will continue the fight against this weaponization and lawfare case against me, including the ridiculous claim of defamation, with all my power and strength. This case is really against the United States of America and all it stands for, and should never be allowed to happen to another president. Can he do anything more about this?
Nothing. He's going to write a $5.8 million check. Have to supplement the 5.5 that's already being held by the court, and Eugene Carroll will cash that check sometime in sometime in the near future. With regard to the her claims, keep in mind that this is one of 27 women over the course of the last 3 decades who's come forward with accusations against.
See what I mean? This curse is coming. Now that curse is at an individual level for some people, and it's going to hurt Trump. It's also going to be at a societal level. The curse is emerging, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to. You can see that there are things that are emerging in the sphere where once September 11th, 2026 happens, and you go into 2 years from there, you can see on how certain things with Trump will start to devolve and his power will start to wane. And it's way beyond just being a lame duck president. They're going to go after him. And the Democratic Party most likely will take the House and he will get impeached again. And will he be able to survive it then? Maybe not. Maybe not. Now you got to remember, Trump is a very lucky person, but sometimes luck goes wrong or sometimes luck runs out. And he didn't finish the job that he was meant to do, and that was to destroy Iran. Now some people say, oh, you just want to, you're a warmonger, Paul, and blah, blah, blah. I'm just looking at the data. A lot of bad things are happening to Teflon Don now, the moment that he decided to fail in Iran. And it's only going to ramp up. It's going to get worse.
And for sexual misconduct. This is one of 3 women that he has lied openly about, just since his presidency. Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels, who were at the heart of his 34 criminal felony convictions. He denied having relationships with them. He denied having anything to do with her, said she wasn't his type, said other things about her that were defamatory. The jury didn't have any difficulty with that. And he lost $5 million in the first trial under Joe Tacopina, who I think did an excellent job, compared to Alina Habba, who ended up losing $83 million.
So what about the mail-in ballot case? I mean, that was significant, and you heard Kristen Holmes reporting, right, that he is really upset about that. Then there's the Lisa Cook case, which he also took a hit in from the Fed. She also is Fed governor. So do you read anything into these losses by Trump at the Supreme Court, where obviously, let's just state the obvious here, Ty, this is a Supreme Court where he thinks he stacked it with people who are going to rule in his favor, and FTC ruling aside, which was obviously very significant, they did rule in his favor. These other very, very monumental cases, they did not.
Right. Trump views this very transactionally. They're his people. They should vote his way. I mean, that's his view of the world. But, these people are, they're there to call balls and strike, as Chief Justice Roberts said at his hearing. He did that today. I think he tried very desperately, if you look at the alignment of all these different opinions, to hold the center of the court. He was in the majority in the Cook case. He was in the majority in the Mississippi ballot case. Amy Coney Barrett, who wrote the Mississippi ballot case, is a conservative. She is a strong conservative, but she's also an intellectually honest person. And she wrote the decision in the way that she actually believes. I know they're livid about that. I know Steve Bannon, one of Trump's advisors, convicted felon and Epstein confidant, has trashed her today, and that Trump is livid. But the reality is she did her job, and she should be proud of that.
So I think these are very, very significant decisions. I think the Cook case is very much different than Ms. Slaughter's case. I commend Ms. Slaughter for her service to the country, but I think on constitutional grounds that the cases are very distinct, and the enabling legislation for the Fed has that for-cause provision that Justice Roberts relied upon.
So we're hours away possibly from birthright citizenship. What do you expect there?
I expect that, given the rulings today, particularly the ruling on the Mississippi voting case, I would expect that Trump will be rebuked again on birthright citizenship by the court. It could be unanimous. It should be unanimous. It's really an obvious decision, but given the tone of some of the conservative opinions, particularly Justice Alito, he and Thomas may rule against him. I do think that the government will likely win the two transgender sports cases where different states have tried to eliminate trans athletes from women's sports. So I think there'll be a little bit of some for Trump, some for the people tomorrow. But on birthright citizenship, which I think is at the fundamental core of what it is to be an American, I think that the country will be proud tomorrow of the Supreme Court.
My first guest is one of the Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook's attorneys, Norm Eisen, joins me now. Norm, I'm so glad that you're here. I know that you have been very busy.
Just remember, this whole fiasco was because of mortgage fraud. And the system is allowing for a minority to do mortgage fraud.
Obviously, trying to protect your client, but also the legacy that this represents as well. And I know the Fed governor is grateful the Supreme Court has saved her job for now, but they also expanded the president's executive power. Norm, how does that fit with her tonight?
Well, the Supreme Court protected the independence of the Fed, Laura. So let's start with the centrality of the Federal Reserve to the U.S. economy and to the economy of the world. That is a significant matter. We're very grateful that the rule of law has operated. Yeah. And before turning to the Slaughter case, let's know this whole absurd mess was based on groundless allegations against Dr. Cook. It was stopped and enjoined by a lower court. We won at the DC Circuit on appeal, and today we won at the Supreme Court. So that is a significant victory.
But there are some limitations. When you get to that, limitations, of course, one of the things Chief Justice Roberts points out is that the ultimate question of whether the president can remove her for cause will depend in part on the underlying facts. In this opinion, we have not addressed those facts. So explain why this is far from over.
Yes, but if you look at that page of the decision, it is the most important page, yes. 13 and 14 of the decision. They say you have to look at the unique status and role of the Fed.
Yes.
They say our review is deferential, but we are not required to exhibit a naivete from which ordinary citizens are free. In other words, they know what's gone on here. They reject what happened to Dr. Cook as baseless, as a violation of her rights. And I think while they don't define what cause is, they're clear that it is an exacting standard because there's no factual basis for these absurd allegations being made against Dr. Cook.
But explain.
I am confident that we will be able to continue to fight this issue. Now,
but I want you to explain. I know we're going to this because I want, aside from the underlying facts involving in her specifically, because you know this case.
My understanding is that she had 4 properties and she took mortgages out and said that all 4 properties are primary residence. That's mortgage fraud.
Bigger, of course, than Dr. Cook, and obviously it's personal to her, but it's very personal to those who believe in the Constitution and, of course, the independent agencies. Explain why the court would say the Federal Reserve has a different place in our society in terms of the independence of the agency compared to the Slaughter case where they said the for cause is not applied there.
And the court looked to the
Introducing the world's most researched brain photobiomodulation device, the V-Lite Neuro. The V-Lite Neuro is a next-generation brain stimulation device that's safe, comfortable, and effective. It is shown to re-energize the brain by improving blood flow, neural connectivity, and brain performance in independent clinical research. This is accomplished through our V-LED.
The court looked to the historical status. The majority are originalists. They,
as long as you don't have orthostatic hypotension, all you got to do is just put your brain, all you have to do is put your head upside down, get some blood flow there for about 30 seconds, and you'll be fine. You don't need some fancy device with LED lighting to improve brain function. Now, if you have orthostatic hypotension, then you got a problem. You can't do that. But some people are so dumb. This is the reason why you do some balancing exercises and move around. You get better blood flow. Everyone is looking for something simple. That ad, they were talking about brain stimulation. What were they doing? They were sitting on the couch. Do you need brain stimulation if you're moving around? Probably not. Some of the healthiest people I've ever met in terms of physique and cognitive function are farmers.
The historical status of the First Bank of the United States, the Second Bank, and the other financial institutions, and the independence that they had historically. I do not agree with the distinction that they made. I think the independent agencies, which have been recognized for almost a century since Humphrey's executor as an essential part of American governance, they should have been accorded the same treatment of for-cause removal. Congress has interpreted the role of the independent agencies, and they have said, we are going to give this Article 1 power, congressional power. We're going to authorize that for these independent agencies that operate within Article 2. I disagree with Slaughter, but protecting the independence of the Fed, the American economy, the world economy is very material. And if you look at Slaughter, they do say they are not reaching a wide variety of issues. Not all offices created by Congress necessarily come with the triggering executive power, so there may be exceptions for other offices created by Congress. There are some functions traditionally handled outside the executive. This rule may not apply there, and on and on. So don't give up hope. We have over 300 cases and matters at Democracy Defenders Fund in action. We're going to keep on fighting.
Well, FD and I, Bill Pulte, believes you might have to keep fighting when it comes to your client because he believes that she will be indicted for mortgage fraud. You are adamant about the bogus nature of the underlying claims that triggered this lawsuit and ultimately ended in front of the Supreme Court. But do you see this indictment coming down the road, or is Pulte just trying to litigate the case in the court of public opinion?
There is no basis for an indictment. We've seen this administration wrongfully investigate and attempt to indict people. The courts have been very tough on that. Look at Attorney General Tish James. The court threw the case out, and then you were a prosecutor, Laura. Grand juries refused to consider the case. That's so rare. Jim Comey, many others, the Broadview Six in Chicago, the sandwich thrower. So many of these cases have been rejected by the courts. If they try this misbegotten approach to Dr. Cook, we're going to vigorously fight it. I don't think the courts will entertain it. How wrong when the government says this kind of thing about people. When you lose a case at the Supreme Court, you immediately move to target someone. That's not America.
Norma Eisen, thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
The question is, did she do mortgage fraud? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important. You don't want to turn into a Steve Jobs. Now, by taking the digestive enzyme complex, you'll be able to break up your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids and allow you to absorb those nutrients with less stress on your digestive system. Digestive enzyme complex also has the proteolytic enzymes that break up glycoproteins, and digestive enzyme complex has the enzymes called bromelain to help to break up clots. Super important. So please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex to help with your digestion, but also cardiovascular function. Good night formula helps you to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. Why? Because it has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. And when you are in those cycles of REM sleep regularly, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, you're consolidating memory, and you'll be well rested. When you do that regularly, you are reducing the chances of having dementia. Good sleep actually helps with brain function. It slows down the aging process. Myotrol helps to build muscle. If you're 40 years of age or older, you can't build muscle as well as when you were younger. Why? Because your methylation has increased as you've aged and has slowed down the expression of building muscle. Myotrol will help to allow for that gene expression to take hold and build muscle and maintain muscle. It will also help with the health of your mitochondria, so you have the energy to maintain that muscle. So to reduce atrophy and to build muscle, take Myotrol. Stack this with the Gladiator barley for added benefits of building up that muscle, and it's important. It's not just musculature and helping with bone density, but building up back muscles are really important to improve posture, improve venous return flow, and also lymphatic flow. So helping with the immune system and the cardiovascular system. Building muscle will also help with your brain because you're increasing concentrations of BDNF and myokines, which are neuroprotective. Please go to my store, get the Myotrol. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you will benefit from Myotrol to build muscle for your sport. I highly recommend stacking this with the Gladiator barley. And because we're in the allergy season, please go to my store, get the structural nano silver lozenges. You can get it in orange splash and in Manuka honey. This will help to mitigate those allergens and maintain a good, healthy epithelial lining for your oral pharynx. Please go to my store and get the structural nano silver lozenges. And they neutralize because it has the structural nano silver. So please go to my store and get the great supplements that I have. Use discount 5 and you save some money. Alrighty. What's going on in the world? Let's listen to Fox News about the SCOTUS ruling.
Two guys couldn't find clothes that fit, so they built a multi-million-dollar brand for shorter men. Stephen and Eric were both under 5'8".
So now the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled in favor of Idaho and West Virginia laws, these are state laws now, that ban transgender athletes from participating on female sports teams. So the challenges against those laws have now prevailed. Don't know what the breakdown was. Some thought it might be 9-0. Others were suggesting 7-2. We'll await that and bring in our legal panel, Jonathan Turley, Brett Tolman, former federal prosecutor, and Carrie Severino, former law clerk for Justice Thomas and president of JCN. Okay, Professor Turley, the Supreme Court rules in favor of those laws. Break it down.
This is what we anticipated after the oral argument. The justices appeared to view this as a matter left to the states. This is welcome news for many in the country. This is an issue that polls almost at 70% in favor of keeping sports to biological genders. So this is likely to really spur on other states to follow suit in terms of their own laws. It also reflects the fact that the court previously, in fact last year, said that transgender status is not a protected class in the sense of race or religion. So that is a consistent position. Particularly justices like Justice Barrett have been extremely outspoken on that point, saying that this is not going to happen, to treat transgender status as that same type of protected class. And during the argument, the litigators actually sort of tried to avoid that because they knew where the majority of the court was.
And Shannon Breen, you've got a little bit of more information for us as this has just come down from the court.
Interesting opinion in that there were all kinds of splits, concurrences and dissents, but nearly every justice is signed on to concurring at least in part. We'll have to read the different concurrences and dissents here, but all of them support this decision at least in part. From the majority opinion, it says sports are highly competitive and generally zero-sum. At almost every turn, someone wins and someone loses. Every athlete who makes a team.
It's not just, all right, there's a lot to unpack with this ruling. First, it's a religious issue, all right? You have many people that believe from a religious standpoint that this transgender fluidity issue is antithetical to Bible teachings or Torah teachings. It's antithetical to religious belief. So that's one issue. Secondly, there is a takeover by the ultra libs to try to control the idea of gender. And this is another mechanism where they try to devolve society. You control the words of a society, and you're trying to control the determination of individuals. So everything is just relative. It's called relativism in philosophy. Then you really don't have a North Star for the society. Now, for thousands of years, the North Star for most societies has been religion. Either Christian religion, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, whatever, Hinduism, but there was a North Star. And it was through the lens of theology. But with a modern context, with relativism, anything goes. And it started by saying, well, no one religion is more powerful than another, or I shouldn't say more powerful, more valid. That's where it starts. And then it's a slippery slope from there. Then even no religion, atheism. Well, take it even further. Transgenderism. All these isms start to pop up with a relativist philosophy. Now, when a ultra-liberal society starts to control language and defines words in a different way, what it means to be a male, what it means to be a female, and pushes an agenda through the Pride movement, and it's in your face now, and it's exposing it to children, and they become confused, and then it's just a snowball effect. This is dangerous for the society. So there's this religious component, there's also a philosophical component between the Enlightenment and relativism. But there's also another component, and that is the Ivy League. Getting your kid, I'll call it the Ivy League, or the Ivy League Plus, getting your kid into these good schools. And to get in, you have to have the grades, you have to have the extracurriculars, and in many cases, you have to have talent in music and or in sports. So the soccer moms out there that want Johnny and Jane to go to Harvard, they don't want some transgender issue going on in their high school or private school that may prevent their kid from getting into the Ivy League. So that's another dynamic with this. And as time goes on, because of collegiate sports getting some money, the athletes getting money to perform, right, through ads, they get commercial revenue, and I forgot the name of it, LIB or whatever it's called, LIN, whatever it is. But the thing is there's money now involved. So it's not just gender, it's not just a philosophy issue, it's not just a religious issue. Now it's John and Judy can't get in to the Ivy League because of some trans sexual issue in the sports at their school, either private or public. Now, I would say that most of this problem is in the public school system. So there's this tension that's going on with soccer moms. And they will feel that it was unfair for some trans student to do better in a certain sport. For example, a male trans playing in a female sport where, because of testosterone levels, because of musculature, that trans student does better than any of the females. And it prevents those females to doing well. And it prevents them from maybe going to a good school because they didn't perform as well on track or for lacrosse or whatever it is, for swimming. Doesn't matter. So there's this tension between the ones that are pushing this agenda through relativism and the ones that are anchoring themselves to some sort of North Star. Enlightenment, religion, or even just the idea of fairness, and pushing back on trying to redefine words. When you have a society that can't define what a male and female is accurately, then it's sick. That is a symptom of a disease in the society. So this ruling also involves soccer moms and that competition to get into the Ivy League. And the competition is much more fierce now than ever. It is way harder to get into the Ivy League now than 20, 30 years ago. And all of these middle-class Americans or upper middle-class Americans that have now accumulated some wealth, they're spending much more on their kid to try to get them in the Ivy League or Ivy League Plus. And they don't want to be knocked out because of some sort of trans kid.
Takes a roster spot from another athlete, and every player who earns playing time reduces the playing time of a teammate. Every player who makes the starting lineup sidelines another who remains on the bench. They go on to say this, like every student who earns an athletic scholarship takes that opportunity away from another student, and so on. Women and girls who play sports care deeply about all of these things. They obsess about them. They spend extraordinary
They need the
time.
scholarship to pay for the higher cost. They need the record of them being in that sport, maybe doing a championship or doing well, to be able to get a slot at the Ivy League. And so that's another part of this in society. So what is it really with the ultra liberal? It's about taking things away from people where they don't deserve it. They're taking something from you. This is the reason why I said that ultra liberals are not aligned with the Enlightenment of John Locke. John Locke basically stated life, liberty, and property. That means that your property is protected by the rule of law and that someone can't take it away from you unduly. But yet the ultra liberal wants to do that through higher taxation, through eminent domain, through degrading the society and charging, causing a situation where landlords have to dump their property, or ideas from the Democrats where they want to tax unrealized gains, which is totally stupid. They want to take from you. And here's a case using transgender students in sports where you're taking away the ability of a female, biological female, karyotype female, and preventing them from getting their scholarship or preventing them from performing in that sport, potentially getting them into a better school. They're taking, these liberals are taking from people. That everything about the liberal, the ultra liberal, is about aligning to the relativism, aligning to socialism, aligning to communism, and it's about taking, not building, not adding, subtracting, taking. That's the deep philosophical issue here.
Effort in the heat and in the cold, to work out early in the morning and late at night to get a little faster, a little stronger, jump a little higher, shoot a little better, and it goes on from there. But essentially says they have to savor these athletic accomplishments and cherish them. And what these states have done here, they say they should be allowed to have these life-changing opportunities on an equal playing field without fear of physical injury from biological males or being forced to compete against biological males. They say consistent with Title IX, which we know was created to protect women's sports opportunities, and the Equal Protection Clause, we hold that the states may maintain women's and girls' sports for biological females. So big wins as we expected here for West Virginia and Idaho, and a recognition.
I think they need to define what biological female means, all right, which is really important. Karyotype. What your genetics say. Are you XX, XY? Now it gets complicated if you're like XXO or XXX or XXY. But those are very rare cases. Very rare. All right? Karyotype. Do you have two, if you have two XX chromosomes, you're categorized karyotypically as a female. All right? That's the key part to it. Now, anyone that knows about biology and about the development of a fetus will understand the wisdom in what I just said. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen will help with your skin, hair, nails, also help with your musculature, your bone density, and joint health. This is a month supply. Take it every day. Make sure, if you want to improve your dermal layer, to take it with my vitamin C and magnesium. That vitamin C and magnesium supplement, the vitamin C, when you drink it with the filtered water and take it with the collagen, it will cross-link and improve your dermal layer. Now, if you take this with also the C60 and the resveratrol and the C60 will work synergistically and improve improve the basal layer. So when new cells are starting to form, new skin cells are starting to be generated and move into the dermal layer, it's improving. So you're improving the dermal layer with the collagen and the vitamin C with the filtered water. You're improving the basal layer with resveratrol and C60, and you're improving your topical layer by the structural nanosilver gel. So please go to my store and get the collagen. Now, Max 35 Cleanse or Max 14 will help to boost up your innate immune system. So get the Max 35 Cleanse or Max 14. They're at different price points, but take a teaspoon a day every day, switch in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds. This will neutralize, improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain a mucosal barrier, and also help with the health of your epithelial cells. When you do that, your innate immune system will improve. You're going to be reducing allergies because you're neutralizing. And during the cold season, you're going to also be neutralizing and helping to boost up that immune system. So please go to my store and get the Max 35, the Cleanse, or the Max 14. Use it daily. This protocol I've been doing for every day for more than 6 years. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
And that there are differences in sports, and when you give a slot to someone else, it costs someone else. And in this case, they say women and girls should be protected from that. If these states choose to do that, they have a right to do so.
Shannon, can I ask a question? I'm sorry if it's going to be a dumb question, but you know, sometimes it's my specialty. So does that mean, I know what that means for Idaho and West Virginia, but let's take another state that wants to go in a different direction. Is it saying that the states get to decide? Or is it saying that,
essentially,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it sounds like what I've read of this so far is sounding like these states have the right to represent that interest. I have to keep reading to see if it goes more broadly than that. But the question here was whether
what this is going to do is create Republican states or ones that are more aligned with a North Star, with the Enlightenment, with some sort of religion, versus other states that are aligned with transhumanism, anything goes, relativism, ultra-liberal. And this sounds a lot like the early days of our country when we had slave states and non-slave states. Now, it's history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And what will happen is you're not going to have a civil war over trans sports, but what you will have is a fracturing the society where people will be more aligned with their belief systems in a blue state or in a red state, and the country will be fracturing more. Now, usually what will happen economically is those blue states will start to decline in economic activity, and they decide to move to states that are better with their economic activity, and then they take that red state and turn it purple. And that's what's happening in Texas right now. But there's a fracturing that's taking place. Blue states are going to turn bluer, red states right now are going to turn redder, but then there's going to be some sort of mixing that takes place, and what happens after that, who knows? But there is a fracturing that's taking place here. This is the reason why I keep on saying, if you're a conservative or even centrist, you need to push back on these social policies. This democratic socialism is a cancer to our constitutional republic. It's a cancer. It needs to be eliminated.
Virginia and Idaho could do this, not whether you could stop other states from deciding differently. So we'll continue to parse this, but it seems for many states, and there are at least 24 or so, who've done something similar to West Virginia and Idaho, that they have good legal standing to maintain those laws where they've passed them similar to these.
So, Shannon, in a moment here, we're going to bring up a young lady by the name of Peyton McNabb. She's from North Carolina. She was a high school athlete. You might remember her story from about a year and a half ago. She was severely injured in the head by a biological male on the women's volleyball court. There's video of it too, and there she was at the State of the Union address. Idaho adopted this law 6 years ago. West Virginia followed a year later. Carrie Severino, your reaction on this ruling now?
This is the #1 Senate race in the country, and I need your help because the Republican Party has already spent $10 million, and our FEC deadline is just a few days away when we publicly report our fundraising. This is Senator John Ossoff in Georgia, and now is when I need your help. If you're upset about what's happening to our country, please chip in what you can.
This is an absolute win for women's sports. I've got a daughter who plays sports, and this is showing that the Supreme Court understands that, the Title IX Equal Protection Clause protect women as women. I think that it seems like there were some really great concurring opinions there. Justice Thomas.
It's way beyond that. It's way beyond that. It's also, think about it. All these justices, they make money, they have kids, they want them to go to good schools. They realize that these trans students that are supplanting females in sports hurts females' cause in getting into a good school. And that's why they're pushing back. Now, I think it's the right policy. We need to have a North Star. We need to have an alignment with a philosophy that is about protecting our civil liberties, not taking away from us. The ultra-libs, they just want to take. They just want to take. They want to take away even your gender. That's how crazy they are. They want to redefine your gender. They want to redefine everything. So it's about time that the Supreme Court actually got their act together. But it's a bigger issue here. It's a bigger issue. It's about money. It's about philosophy. It's about the fracturing of the country with these blue states and red states. And this ties into what I've been saying about the emergence of a curse that's coming. It's going to last for 2 years. And it's going to get dangerous because you're talking about also 2028. And what had happened in, just around 1928, 1929, there was a major crash in the market. There was we seemed to maybe have a bubble in AI. Don't be surprised because of everything that's been happening with our failure in Iran and with our failure domestically with pushing these ultra-liberal policies that our country will feel pain economically. Because it seems that Americans don't understand anything but economics. All they care about is the dollar and how it affects them. Now think about it. Why do many Americans not want to continue with the war and to go full bore with it against Iran? Because of economics, because of the cost of goods, because of the cost of gas. So Trump backs off, doesn't get the job done. But here's where the curse comes. Your gas prices are going to go down. Oh, things seem good. This market keeps on going up. Then all of a sudden, bam, crash, major recession, major job loss. Don't think that you are safe because of what you do. You are safe or have security or have stability because God allowed it to happen. Once God decides not to allow it, you're up Schitt's Creek. And that's what's happening right now. It's starting.
So transgender status is not a protected status. This is, and even it's significant. Even Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson concurred in part on this. They acknowledged that the athletes have said that Title IX says sex, and that means biological sex. So I think that's actually an amazing result here. That's a win for reality, because we know that when this law was passed, that's absolutely
Karyotype, not phenotype. Karyotype. It's very important. Karyotype.
what Congress understood sex to mean. We can't take the words of the statute and then try to redefine them to mean something else. If Congress wants to pass a different law, okay, but the court can't redefine that.
And Brett Tolman on Title IX, like if they had not ruled in this way, I mean, then what's the point of Title IX?
Yeah, Dana, your question was actually a great question. And the reason is because people are asking, did the Supreme Court finally look at biology? Did it look at the science? And is it applying what I was really anticipating? And that was there going to be mention of equal protection? I think, we have to dive into the case, but this is a message. It's a strong message that Title IX is important. It protects women in sports. I have daughters, I have granddaughters that are starting to play sports. We want to see that they are able to compete fairly. The Supreme Court sent a strong message today, and I think all the states who might have other ideas of trying to go against a ruling like this, we'll see if the court, successfully is going to hold at bay additional efforts to encroach into women's sports by biological men. But I'm hopeful that the message is strong enough and the ruling is tight enough that we avoid it.
All right, all three of you stand by. I want to introduce now Peyton McNabb, Independent Women's Forum Ambassador, former three-sport high school athlete from North Carolina, severely injured by a biological male on the women's volleyball court. Good morning to you, and congratulations. You won.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
How do you feel now?
I'm just feeling so blessed. Of course, this is something that means a lot to me. It affected me personally, and there's a lot of eyes on this across the country. There's families, there's parents, and there's coaches and daughters who are watching this decision being made. And I'm just so thankful that they get to understand that they are protected, and it's okay for their state to protect them, because that's all it was. All that they were having to determine is if it was okay if states could protect their girls or if it was allowed. So I'm thankful that states are able to protect their girls. Of course, they shouldn't have been put in that.
I'm glad that the Supreme Court did this. All right, and they created this firewall to prevent males from playing into female sports, but they need to put in a little bit of detail. This term biological has two interpretations. This is the reason why you have to be karyotype, not phenotype. Phenotype is the physical. Karyotype is actually what your genome is. Do you have XX or XY? Now, there are rare cases where there's XXO, XO, XXY, right? So for female sports, where a male can't play in them, and they use the term biological male, all right? It's important to understand there are rare cases where you have XY, you have a problem with your receptors when testosterone is being produced in the early fetus development phase. And because everybody is hardwired to female, no matter what your genome is, everybody's hardwired. The early stage of a fetus is hardwired to be female. Now, if your receptor for testosterone is not working properly, and you're XY for karyotype, you will develop as a female. So biological, it's important to state for these individuals that may actually look phenotypically as a female, but are karyotypic as a male, they should be not allowed to play in female sports. So it's important to make it very clear that it is the karyotype. If you have a Y chromosome, even if you have developmental issues as a fetus and you have a phenotypic representation that is female, but you really have an XY chromosome, they shouldn't be able to be in the sport. The term biological, it needs to be teased out. Phenotype or karyotype. It should be karyotype, because when you err on karyotype, you're making sure all of the XY karyotypes aren't allowed to play. When you view it as phenotype, then some Y chromosome individuals would be able to play in female sports. And there's the problem. And it's because of this nuance that most people don't understand. Most people that are listening to me probably won't even understand what I'm talking about. But the thing is that you could be an XY chromosome male and have a phenotype that's female because of the production of testosterone at the early those early phases of fetal development didn't happen, or you are producing testosterone and the receptors aren't working, you will develop as a female, even though you have XY. So it's important. It should be only karyotype. Only karyotype. Because with these receptor issues, with this developmental issue that I'm bringing up with the XY, it's not and or. There may be a little bit, some receptors may be working a little bit and other receptors aren't. So you may have a fetus that's developed slightly as a male and slightly as a female. This is the reason why biological female in female sports, right? And if let me rephrase that. If you have a XY karyotype, you cannot be in female sports, period. Independent of the phenotype. That's what the ruling should have fine-tuned that term biological. So, but here, once again, it's about the nuance. Just like the nuance during the crisis in 2020, most people just gravitated to one or the other and didn't understand the nuance. Here's a nuance. What's the term biological? Phenotype, karyotype. Those two different things. They don't give you the same answer. To guarantee a male cannot play in a female sport in these states that ban it, it has to be based on karyotype, not phenotype.
To begin with, but again, you know, this really does help the Supreme Court, because to me, if they wouldn't have ruled this way, they would have lost all credibility. So I'm very thankful it went this way, and I'm excited to see it keep pushing in the right direction.
Peyton, I just want to mention, one, that it's great to see you again. And I remember years ago when you came on with your dad. And, you know, a lot of parents have fought very hard for their girls. And I'm curious about your feelings in terms of, you know, their love and support for you and their willingness to stick up for you when this was happening.
Yeah, this is really a full circle moment, because you guys were the first interview that I ever had. So this is really a full circle, but my dad has been with me through all of this. My whole family has, my community, my sister, like, this has been an insane thing that happened to us, and it's happened all around.
This is surface stuff. Yeah, great. Another issue that enforces the wisdom of what I've been saying about it's about the karyotype, not the phenotype. Phenotype is what's presented. Now, there's biological phenotype during the development of the fetus and growing outside of the uterus, but you have a development process, natural. All right. Now, you also have, because of surgeries and plastic surgeries and gender changes, it doesn't change your genome. It changes your physique. It changes your phenotype, what you look, right? So there is artificial phenotype and there is biological phenotype. This is the reason why you want the term biological male can't be in female sports based on the karyotype. And there's so many people that pontificate about this subject matter and they have no idea what they're talking about. No idea of the nuance of this. So if a female looks female, if you do a physical exam and they look female, should they be in the female sport? The answer is no, because you do a karyotype, and if they have a Y chromosome, out.
It's not a unique experience, and so many families, so many moms and dads they just felt so helpless watching their daughters struggle, being put in this it seemed impossible situation. So to see where we're at now versus where we were when this first started, when I first met you guys, I mean, it's just an insane progress that we've made, and I'm incredibly thankful and blessed to have had parents.
All right, then let's think about the other side of the equation. There's an XY karyotype, phenotype female, because of developmental issue that I talked about earlier. Testosterone production during the fetal development is low or not responding to the androgen receptors. And they are karyotype male, phenotype female, and now they're not allowed to play in female sports because they have a Y chromosome. Should they be in male sports? Now, because of the androgen issue that they have, they will not have the musculature to be able to compete, even though they are XY. Because the Y isn't working. There's some sort of mutation issue. But if they can't perform on the field as a male in a male sport, they get cut. They aren't part of the team or whatever. So there's a nuance here. This is rare. What I'm saying is rare. Most of the problem was a bunch of people were going through some sort of transition, gender fluidity, maybe full transition, but still had the musculature of a male. That's most of the cases in this. But there's this small nuance that people need to pay attention to. What's biological? What does that mean? Karyotype, phenotype. Doesn't give you the same answer.
Who cared so much about me and pushed me to keep fighting until we got to some good news.
It's been interesting to watch you grow up. Thank you for your time.
Proud of you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming.
But I do believe that SCOTUS was right. They needed to ban it, males in female sports. But I didn't read the actual ruling, but I have a feeling because of what everyone's talking about in the media, that SCOTUS did not tease out phenotype and karyotype. But the bigger problem here is that it's going to create a division within the country. The blue states are going to push for trans rights at the state level, and the red states are going to be blocking trans rights. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen will help to remodel your joints if you have arthritis or a sports injury. This will help to rebuild that cartilage, rebuild the cushioning of the joint, block the pain by blocking the pain gatekeeper NAV 1.7. So please go to my store and take the collagen, take it every day, stack it with the collagen. Structural nanosilver. Structural nanosilver, super important to have it at home or at work. You can get it in a tube form or the quick dispenser called Renew. It's dual purpose. You can put it on a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn and help to heal it quicker in about a third of the time. During the allergy season or the cold season, lightly coat your nostrils. You can also put it on your hands. It'll stay active for 5.5 hours. And you can use it as a daily skincare to help with improving the top of your skin. It's a topical. Please go to my store and get the structural nano silver gel. The markets, let me just do a recap of the markets. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,483. I do have a year-end target of 7,800. And if you paid attention to me early in this broadcast, you would have made money if you put in a new position in the S&P 500. That new position would have made money. And oil is trading at 69.84. I think that there is going to be this retest of that support level of 68.70. If it breaks, then oil will continue to fall and probably natural gas will rise a little bit. Natural gas is in the 3.3 range. It's a little too expensive, so most likely it's going to go down. I've put some shorts in to capture that price move. If the MOU starts to unravel again throughout the week, which I suspect will happen, most likely oil will go back up to about $72. Thank you for listening. That's the end of my broadcast. Please help support the work that I do by donating. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel or Substack. All these videos are for free, so please help support the work that I do. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.